Hey, you, and welcome to another episode of The Western Hippie. I'm your host, Michaela, and I'm here with my co-host, Willard the Corgi, and you are in for such a treat today. I just got done recording, Willard, just got done recording an episode with my friend Landon, who I went to film school with, and we just got done talking about all things Tom Cruise and Top Gun, and threw in a little Star Wars, and I think we ended up ranting on Avatar at the end, but this was so much fun, and if you have not gone to see Top Gun yet, I highly recommend you go see it. It's just such a good movie, and Landon and I talk about that at the end. Like, when people ask me why I enjoy it so much, that's it. It's just a good freaking movie, and I just had Landon. So one of the reasons I wanted to record this episode with Landon specifically is he is incredible when it comes to movies. Like, it's insane how well he knows movies and how he can look at it through specific lenses. And we talk about this, but I had a few questions for him that him and I had not talked about privately yet. And I had two questions, like, what movie do you like better, Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick? And then which one is your favorite, Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick? Because he can do that really well. Like, he can look at a movie objectively and say, like, this was the better movie, and also the worst one is my favorite movie, and here is why. Well, whenever I have questions about movies and stuff like that, I just call him, and it dawned on me, like, not everybody gets to call and talk to Landon about movies. And so I wanted to bring that to you today because, like I said, I could listen to him talk about movies all day long. He also was 14, which he talks about in this episode, when he got into Top Gun. And so then he also got into the planes. And there's certain things that I honestly didn't think me not knowing planes would have me miss parts of the movie. But after talking to him privately and then going back to watch Top Gun again in theaters, it totally made the experience better. So if you have not seen Top Gun yet, there are spoilers. There are a ton of spoilers. I know for me that if I'm on the fence about going to see a movie, I will watch a review with spoilers, and it'll either make me decide to go watch it or not. So if that's you, by all means, listen to this episode. If you do not like spoilers, do not listen to this episode. Press pass. Go right past go. Do not collect $200. You know the drill. If you have seen this movie, I highly recommend you listen to this episode because, like I said, after I talked to Landon about this episode on a phone conversation, that's why I'm like, we have to do a podcast, because it made the second time watching the movie after talking to Landon so much better, and I didn't think that was possible. So anyway, yeah, super exciting. I loved this episode, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Why don't you take us to when you first saw Top Gun for the first time, and then what it was like being a kid growing up in San Diego and Top Gun, and kind of how that affected you as a kid.
Yeah, I don't have a memory of like seeing it for the first time because it was always just around in my life. And then, when you're a kid, you assume that everyone just lives the same life that you live.
Yeah.
So yeah, Top Gun to me was always that, that jet movie with Tom Cruise, because I grew up in a Tom Cruise household, and I think a big part of that is because of the movie Top Gun. I didn't realize it at the time, but I always knew, like, my dad had an office when I was a kid right across the street from Miramar. It was like, so we drove by it every weekend when I went to work with them, and to this day the jets are still flying. Now they're F-35s and F-18s, like in this new movie, but back then it probably would have been F-14 Tomcats and F-18s. But I remember, we were always like, my dad would be like, that's the road Tom Cruise drove. That's where they shot it. And my whole life, I would just look over there and just be like, that's so cool. Because I think Top Gun's the first movie that I recognized, like, my city in. Not a lot of movies are shot here.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It's like the nicest place on the planet, especially in the country. Mm-hmm. And so that was always cool with that movie. I personally got obsessed with the movie when I was 14. I was getting into more because my dad always had VHS tapes of action films, a lot of Bruckheimer movies for some reason. Mm-hmm. He was part of that. Back in the 90s, you had a VHS club, and they would send you movies. And I think you were able to, like, view them and send them back, or just keep them or whatever. And he usually would record. My dad was the guy that had two VCRs, and he would record them, or sometimes he would just keep them. So we had, like, he had this stack of like dad movies, right? This is the 90s. We were like young, and he would watch them in his office. It was like The Rock with Nicolas Cage, Sean. These are all Bruckheimer movies. The Rock, Con Air, and like half of them had Nicolas Cage. And then Face Off was one of them. And I'm pretty sure Top Gun came in that. And when I was 14, I got really I started to get more into movies, and I was able to watch these rated R movies by myself. I wasn't like afraid of them. Cause I was a kid. I was like, oh, dad's watching his crazy shit.
Right.
And so I just and Top Gun was one of those. Because I was going to work with him more, and we had the Midway Museum opened up here, which is a out of commission Navy carrier that's stationed here. That's now a full museum. You can tour. They have full jets on the flight deck. More on the Midway later. But we did that tour, and I just got really into like jets and things in particular that year. So I found the Top Gun VHS that summer, and I just watched the crap out of it and became really into that movie.
You would have been 14 around 2004.
Yeah, 14 going on 15. And then Tom Cruise is always my favorite actor, but I think when I was a kid, it was just like because we watched Mission Impossible so much. But I really became obsessed with Tom Cruise, like, from that time where I got into Top Gun. And what was that? So that would have been 2005. Yeah. And then War of the Worlds had come out that summer. So, and I'm, Spielberg guy. So that was just like, I was just like, yeah, Tom Cruise is the shit. Top Gun's the shit. And yeah, back then, I mean, there was always talk, I guess, of like a Top Gun sequel. I never thought it was gonna be something back then I had no concept of like a sequel coming out that long after a movie. I didn't even think it was possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the back of my head, I always wanted to see a Top Gun sequel since then. But yeah, so yeah, that's kind of where just Top Gun just made me proud to be from San Diego. Proud of the military influence we have here, and just seeing those jets like when I was a kid in Miramar. And even to this day, I mean, I still drive, I'm still around there, and I just watch them doing their little circles, and sometimes they get close enough you can see right under them. And yeah, so that year 2014, I was studying jets, and like I had to relearn all this stuff because I kind of had forgotten about it, but like I knew what jet was which. Like the F-14 has the wings that fold back. It looks like a Dorito when it's in supersonic, but then the wings can come out like this when it's taking off or landing or not flying at Mach 2, whatever. That jet's really fast. But yeah, the F-18 is a smaller jet, just fixed wings. But yeah, I can definitely tell them apart. I know to most people, they're probably just like, oh, they're gray planes, like whatever.
Yeah.
And there's other planes in the Air Force. But yeah, the F-14, the one from the original movie, has always been like my favorite. And a lot of people will say that too. It's just such an iconic looking aircraft. And it looks so great in that, like Tony Scott really shot that plane well in the first movie. And they're all real. I think there's a few models in some of the action sequences, but for the most part, it's all real. So yeah, that's the history of that's my history with the movie Top Gun. And then it's funny, like I guess in San Diego, like you're rarely gonna find someone that doesn't know the movie. I know everyone knows the movie, but as I branched out and as this movie came out, I realized there's a whole generation of people who had never seen the movie.
What are you talking about?
Right at you.
Yeah.
Which is exciting and interesting and cool. I always think the best part of these legacy sequels for any franchise is getting people to check out where it all started or the original. And that's what you got to do.
Yeah, that was actually really cool for me.
Yeah, so just tell me about, because I know it was like literally a month ago is the first time you stepped into this world of Top Gun. And when I told you, because, I was telling you that I was really liking the sequel, which got you excited for it, but you didn't have very much knowledge of, and I wasn't even sure if you were going to like the first one, because a lot of people, which is understandable, it's very 80s. I think the first time I rewatched it, I didn't think too much about it. but then I kept thinking about it, and then you kind of accept the silliness stuff. And I think that's why it's such a big hit, because it's just like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does. And it's just like, it really is its own thing. And yeah, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on your first time watching the original, because you saw it like a month ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was on my way. Like, I watched it the day before we went and saw Maverick, and I was kind of in my head, I'll just go see Maverick and then I'll watch the original. And you said that, the emotions will fit better if you watch the first one first. And I trust you a lot when it comes to movies. And I was like, okay, I'll finish watching it. And yeah, at first I think it takes you back a little bit, if especially me, who hasn't watched as many movies as you have, like the style and the setting. And like, I loved how, we had talked about this earlier. We haven't talked about it here yet, but like, that it's a sexy movie. Like, it just looks sexy. The shots are sexy. You talked about how Tony Scott filmed a lot of it on golden hour. So it's like, once you if you can remove the like barrier of being used to present day movies and present day technology, because obviously a lot of us have 4K cameras on our phones now. So we get taken aback when things don't look a certain way. And for me, it's like, once you remove that, for me, what made the movie good is everything was just raw. There was no, and I'm sure we'll talk about this with Maverick as well, but there was no special effects. It was just really cool shots. We talked about it was done on film. The acting to me was good. I'm a sucker for falling in love with the asshole. And I feel like the movie made you fall in love with the asshole, which was Maverick. He was this cocky fighter pilot. And, even is it Tom Segura, his character? He's the instructor in the first one.
No,
he looks.
Sorry, Tom Skerritt.
Tom Skerritt. Okay, yeah.
Shout out to Tom Segura, though.
Yeah. Oh, is he a guy, or did I just?
He's a comedian. I mean, you must. Yeah, you must know who he is. You didn't just say that name.
Maybe.
Maybe it was so funny you said that. I thought of Tom Segura in that role, and that would be really hilarious.
That would be, yeah. But he asked, like, Maverick, do you think it's going to be your name up on that plaque? And he was like, yes, sir. And he's like, he says cocky or something. And he's like, I like that in a pilot. And, there's a reason, you kind of have this parallel between Ice, Val Kilmer's character, and Maverick. And at the end of the day, like, Maverick saves the day because, Ice is really by the book. He flies ice cold, which comes in handy. But when you're in a pinch, you can't necessarily play by the rules. And I felt like they, showed the power of both really well. But I loved the first movie. I actually liked it better after watching Maverick, because it made me appreciate him and Goose's relationship more. It made me, yeah. And I think, like, you're right. It is special to have a sequel 36 years apart and then be able to bring back Tom Cruise the way they did. So yeah, after watching Maverick, I did appreciate the original Top Gun a lot more.
Yeah, it's especially now with this resurgence of 80s, like with Stranger Things, a lot of there's a lot of 80s nostalgia, I guess, coming through.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. For me, like, funny enough, when I was like young, I hated 80s stuff. If there was any kind of 80s, I was just like,
yeah.
I think because when I was in the late 90s, early 2000s, stuff had shifted so much, it was more serious. And that was kind of the tone I was used to, that seeing some 80s movie with like just how everyone looked and did all that, I just did not like the aesthetic. And then as I got older, I appreciated it more. Except for a few exceptions like Star Wars and Back to the Future, but I didn't see those as 80s movies.
Right.
They're pretty timeless in a way, especially Star Wars. It's not really the only thing that sets Star Wars as being like 80s is, the technology they had at the time, because it was, it's not like our universe or whatever. But yeah, I just wasn't into the 80s thing. And then I think that's why originally when I watched Top Gun by myself, originally I was kind of like, this isn't very good, is it? Like, and I think a lot of people have that first reaction to it. But then there's something about it that's just like, on like a second watch, third watch, you're like, okay, I understand what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, there's nothing like Top Gun. And I got really into Tony Scott movies after that. Like, wanted to see more of his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
More like older Tom Cruise movies that I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
Because I was used to more of the Mission Impossible Tom Cruise and up to War of the Worlds, like I said, like that. I hadn't seen anything from like the 80s Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. And I think more people are doing the same thing now. Like Tom Cruise is definitely having a huge comeback, like, which is great because I've been ride or die with Cruise for like a long time, even through all the past, like whatever, when he was still doing okay, but he wasn't, his star was starting to dim. Now I think it's fully back where it belongs.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's exciting to see. Like, I have no, relationship with him or anything other than I'm a fan of his work. But it's good to see because I'd be at parties or whatever growing up, and it would always come up, oh, Tom Cruise, oh, what he jump on a couch, and I'm just like, if that's the worst thing he did, let's chill out. The guy like is made some great movies. He and produces movies now, and like. He's really been keeping Hollywood real. That's been his whole thing. When Hollywood's been drifting fake and fake and fake. And now I think we're at the point where people are sick of it.
I do
and too. His Mission Impossible movies of the past decade and this reflect how much work he's putting into making movies feel real. And this one, it finally just has all come together. And I think just the pandemic delays and COVID and all that stuff really helped this movie just blow up the way it deserved to blow up.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been exciting to watch because I've been waiting for a long time to see it. And it did not disappoint.
Yeah, I actually wanted you to talk about that a little bit because you and I had talked about it in a private conversation, but I had watched someone else do a review of Top Gun Maverick. And, he said he believed that Tom Cruise was really our last big movie star. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. Like, what do you believe sets Tom Cruise apart from some of the other actors that we have?
Well, I mean, there's no denying Tom Cruise's longevity. He blew up on the scene in like 81, I think, in this small movie called Taps. And he was supposed to be like just an extra, but he was so like dynamic, they elevated his role. And by 83, he had 2 starring movies, one Risky Business, one All the Right Moves. And Risky Business was huge. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, you know the scene where he slides across the floor in his underwear and he's dancing to old time rock and roll. Everyone knows that scene. And watching it now, it's not his best performance. It's not his best movie, but you can see a star being born. It's one of those things. And so that he'd only been around for 2 years. I mean, and he was huge. And then 3 years after that, he was in Top Gun, and the rest is history, I think, as far as his celebrity.
Yeah.
But what he's been able to do, I mean, you watch this movie and it's like you're not looking at a 57, 58-year-old person.
No, not at all.
And you can say, okay, he had work done, whatever, but he's still putting the work in. And I mean, look at people his age from his class. There's actors that aren't even working today that look like, burnt out. This dude has just been putting in the work, and he's at a point now where it's just, he's still killing it. I mean, I know, and adjusted for inflation, I guess Rain Man is his biggest movie, which is so funny because it's like one of his smallest movies, but not adjusted for inflation. Top Gun Maverick is his biggest movie, but Rain Man is what, 1988, 30 whatever years ago. But I grew up on that movie as well. I think you did too, right? You said it was your mom's favorite movie.
I actually haven't seen it, but it is her favorite movie. So
you have to see it. I thought you had seen it.
No. So it's kind of funny because earlier when you mentioned how now that like Mavericks kind of came about, it's taking people down this Tom Cruise alley. And that's totally where I'm at. in
Oh yeah.
watching Maverick or the original Top Gun 2, that definitely like started sparking it. But then watching him in this Top Gun Maverick, that definitely I was like, I just really want to see his artwork, like as a body of work as a whole. So I know you and I talked about it. Like I watched Jack Reacher, I started Jerry Maguire, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll just keep going. I'm kind of catching the ones that are on the streaming platforms I have. And then once I get through those, I'll start going through um, and covering some of the others because he really is. And, you had told me to pay attention to it, but even just watching him, knowing that he did all of the driving in Jack Reacher
Mm-hmm.
and the chasing scene, I just admire the fact like how far he's willing to go, like you said, to make it real, like to not have stunt doubles or to not do a bunch of CGI. And even if maybe the driving scene could have been 10 times better had someone hired a driver. I don't know. I thought it looked great to me, but just the fact that he's willing to push himself that far as a person, I think that comes through for me, just only seeing a handful of his movies now. Like, I think it really comes through across the screen.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that Jack Reacher scene, it's funny to think of it now because 2011 was a big year for him. So Ghost Protocol was the fourth Mission Impossible movie.
Okay.
Tom Cruise, like I said, his star was kind of dimming. People were still kind of, he was getting older. He was like in his 40s, but he did a sequence in that where he was running on I forget what it's called. It's the biggest building in the world in Dubai.
Oh, uh-huh.
And he did it for real. He was running around it and on top of it, just strapped in. And I just remember like when they were filming that, watching the videos on YouTube and just thinking like, man, this is crazy. And then the movie came out and it was like an IMAX and it was shot in IMAX. And it was just like, just crazy. That movie ended up doing really well for him. It was his biggest like hit in a while or whatever. And then after that was Jack Reacher. And then that's a smaller movie. It's pretty contained, plot wise, but the big kind of sequence in that was he drove his own car chase scene, and the way they shot it, like they had a camera and a crane that shows him driving, that you can tell the car's not hitched to anything, and then it goes right into his face. And him and they call him McHugh. His name is McQuarrie. He's the guy that directed like the last couple of Mission Possibles, and he's written or worked on scripts that Tom Cruise has been in since Ghost Protocol. I'm pretty sure that's where they kind of met. But he directed Jack Reacher, and I think him and Cruise get along so well because they just understand each other. McHugh understands what Tom wants, so he's a perfect director for Cruise as a producer.
Sense. That makes sense.
If you watch these last couple Mission Impossible movies or Jack Reacher, you can see that Cruise is driving the cars. Like they shoot him in a way where it's like you definitely see it's not green screen, all this stuff, and it just pays off for audiences, especially like because we're so used to the fake stuff. Like nothing's exciting anymore because audiences know now what CGI is. It's not like the 90s where we were like, what the heck is like, that's a dinosaur. We had no concept of how they did it, but now everyone knows. So now going back to the basics, like this guy is really jumping out of a plane, or this guy is really running on that building, and then this new Top Gun's great because although they didn't allow Cruise to fly an F-18, which I'm pretty sure he was trying hard to do real. The government was no, this is like a $70 million plane or whatever it is. So what they did was there's a 2-seat variant in the F-18. And so they basically put the pilot in the front, the actor in the back, strapped 5 IMAX quality cameras. And so basically it's as real as you're going to get. Tom Cruise did all the moves. I'm sure he knows just as much about that plane as the pilot does.
Probably.
So you're seeing their faces, the G-forces. You're seeing them react to because they're flying in the jet, and it just looks like nothing you've seen before, except in maybe like a documentary, where I'm pretty sure they got the idea because the director was looking at footage of pilots. They had GoPros in their cockpits, and that's the aesthetic they want. And he had been working with the IMAX cameras in the last couple movies that he had done. So he was pretty confident they can stick those in there to get the best quality. They're like 6K or 8K or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the footage just speaks for itself. And then editing that with the real jets, I mean, it's such a great, illusion that they're really in those planes. Because I guess the first movie they wanted to put a camera in the cockpit to get the actors, same thing,
Right.
but they didn't. Like back then, Cruise was just an actor. He didn't have as much clout, obviously, as
Right.
now. And they didn't have time to train the actors, so they put him up there. They got all this footage, but they all looked like they were going to pass out because they they were just actors in a jet. They didn't have any training, so they couldn't use any of that footage. So all the footage of the actors in the first film are on a gimbal and with a rear projection. And if you look at it now, it's almost in comparison, it's almost like no.
Yeah.
There's no G-forces. Like they're going upside down and they're doing this, but it's super phony looking. And I never even thought about it until I see that movie 100 times. Never even thought about that they weren't in a jet. Like I just went for the ride. But now that they made Cruise, these actors had to go through Navy training.
Yeah.
They had to look like, and there's even some shots where I'm like, even Tom Cruise, I'm like, dude, you look like you're taking those G's not so well right there. There's some shots where, he's really pushed in his seat, but I'm so glad they did it this way because you would think most movie directors now go, oh, we're in such a good place with green screen and CGI that it'll look real. But they're like, no, but that you can't get the G's or the, you just can't get that. There's no way to get it unless you CGI like their face going down. But you want realism. And seeing it in IMAX was just the best because when that opened up and they were in those cockpits, it was just the coolest thing. But yeah, so funny enough, so the F-18 Super Hornet that they're in, it's been around for a while. It's kind of on its way out. They're kind of stealth fighters, and they wrote the movie. Again, it was supposed to come out in 2020.
Yeah, can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize, like, the first preview, I went on the Top Gun Instagram page, the first preview dropped in 2019. And so, like, it wasn't even on my radar, but what was it like for you seeing the preview basically in 2019 and then having to wait 3 years?
I have seen those previews so many times. So I think the movie was delayed 4 times total. Because I follow the production. I follow everything Cruise does, and him and McHugh are really good about, like, especially for Mission Impossible Fallout, which is the last Mission Impossible from 2018. They were making that movie for like 2 years, and they were Instagram. They were like showing what they were doing in progress. It was really interesting. And it finally came. I remember it finally came out in 2018. I was like, I think they were making it since like 2016 or something. And I was really excited for that. He flies a helicopter himself, and that's kind of you see the progression of where these stunts are going. Like there's a sequence in that where he's flying for real. They have camera strapped to the and you can see the reflections of the trees, and you can see where that comes into play in Top Gun. It's like, oh, we're not in a helicopter now, we're in F-18, but it's the same kind of realism, and it's just brought up to the next level where it's almost like he keeps topping himself, and you go back and you watch the other movie and you're like, okay, we thought this was an impressive stunt. Now it's just him, so what? He's driving a car, like he's not flying a plane.
Yeah.
But no, it's been really cool. And then so right from literally when Fallout was released in the summer of 2018, they went right into Top Gun. And it was originally expected to come out in the summer of 2019. I was like, oh, hell yeah. But, I think just the doing it for real, I think they were just like, okay, we need more time. So it's going to come out in summer of 2020. So that was a bummer. And little did we know it was ahead of us in 2020.
Right.
So yeah, originally it was 2019, but officially it was 2020. And they had a poster. It was 2020 on there. And then, yeah, same kind of thing. They were shooting stuff from behind the scenes, what they were doing. And funny enough, I went to a wedding, my sister-in-law's wedding. She married a Navy guy, and it was on the Navy base in North Island here in Coronado. And on the beach, I guess their wedding like messed with the production a little bit, and it was the beach scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there was a set out there, like a little, just probably something for the crew or whatever. And I remember thinking, they were saying like, oh yeah, Top Gun's shooting here. And this was like November of 18.
Okay.
or was it 19? I think it was 18. Yeah, it was 18.
Yeah.
So I remember just being like, yes, like can't wait for the like.
Yeah.
And then that was originally like, oh, it's gonna be next summer, and then it turned out now it's gonna be 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, I'm pretty sure that was my first thought was, Top Gun's supposed to come out. What's happening?
That would be your first thought.
I'm not even joking.
No, I know.
And then it was like I think they were expected to come out in November of 2020.
Yeah.
Before we knew what this pandemic was doing.
Right.
But we had been seeing trailers for Top Gun, and they kept changing the trailers, but we had been seeing trailers for that movie since 2019, probably since maybe the teaser probably dropped like maybe a year before the movie was supposed to come out. And I kept like seeing it in IMAX, like, and I was just being like, I cannot wait. I'm going to live in this movie theater when this comes out.
Yeah.
And then it kept getting delayed. And then, so I think it was originally supposed to be summer 2019, and then summer 2020, then like November 2021, and then summer 2020, November 2020, 2021. And I think maybe they were like summer 2021, it's going to happen. And then I'm pretty sure they were like, no, November 2021. And because movies were coming out, but people were still not going to the theaters. People were streaming stuff. And Tom Cruise was adamant that this movie does not go on streaming. This movie was shot, like that poster says, this was filmed for IMAX. It's meant to be seen on the big screen. And it was really frustrating at the time for me, but I mean, it was all well worth it when I finally got to see that movie in May of 2022.
Yeah.
And it was just, I went like 5 times in IMAX, 3 times in like a good IMAX opening weekend. And it was just everything that I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So it was worth the wait. And Tom Cruise is smart. It all worked out. It's the biggest movie he's done. So, but yeah, it was a hard wait. And especially just, during all that time, I mean, I was living in LA for the entire pandemic, and they closed down movie theaters for an entire year. And that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
I know. Poor guy can't go to the movies.
Well, yeah, it's a little more than that though. Like, cause you've talked about it, like going to the movie theaters, it's your pastime, it's your hobby. I mean, everyone suffered in different ways. And you also said, like, which I thought was really powerful, that's part of your meditation or your mindfulness, being just immersed into that. So it might be easy to say poor guy, but movies are a major part of your life that someone who doesn't know you personally may not understand. Yeah,
totally. I didn't understand it until that happened. Like I always knew that's what I enjoyed doing since I was a kid, was going to the theater, like the whole experience of it. It's you're taking time out of your day. I always had to drive far. I grew up, we used to drive a good half hour to go to a decent theater when I was a kid. Now I live here again and I'm doing the same thing, but it's like seeing it with an audience and reacting to everything. It's just, you can't replicate it. I've tried. I literally had a movie theater set up in my room, but anyway, yes. And then I got the past few years, I got really into the IMAX thing. They've been working with Hollywood to really immerse the audience on these big screens with this big sound. So I love IMAX.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're like not in the 3D, because that was bad. The 3D phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just gets so old. It's like, I don't want to waste glasses. I just want to watch the movie. Like, and most of the time they were shitty movies that would try to fool you with the 3D.
That makes sense.
Like, so if it's a shitty movie, you're like, dude, I don't care. Like,
put it in 3D.
Yeah. And there's a time there where there was every IMAX movie was IMAX 3D. And I just stopped going to IMAX. And then they finally were like, they would do like a couple shows that weren't 3D. So we started going to those. And then finally they were like, all right, no more IMAX 3D. You're going to IMAX to see IMAX. And I was like, thank God, it's finally like over.
Yeah.
And yeah, just so glad Top Gun is not in 3D. I mean, movies are already 3D, and this is just like, a fake 3D effect would not add anything to an already great visual experience for doing everything for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, yeah. So your impressions, because I really wanted you to see this movie, but I really wanted you to see the first movie first. And I was really like, Michaela,
you were.
You have to, like, you can see this movie without the first one. I think you're still going to like it, but I'm just like, there's a lot of stuff that will hit home emotionally.
Yeah.
If you understand
Yeah.
the first film. But I didn't expect you to get kind of obsessed with it, but
Yeah.
I'm glad you did. And you saw the movie,
Yeah.
what, 5 times?
Yeah. And probably going back for a 6th this
Yeah.
weekend.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Because my record before this movie was 5.
Oh, what, really? Yeah.
There was a Star Wars Episode 3, because back then we thought it was the last Star Wars movie, and I was 14. It was
Right.
the same year that I got into Top Gun, actually. Funny enough.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
And what's funny is thinking back now, because I used to be I was born in 1990. I was 8 when Phantom Menace came out, so it was like
Okay.
that movie was made for me.
Right.
Anakin was my age, that kind of thing. I was
Yeah.
11 when Attack of the Clones came out. Perfect
Okay.
age for that stupid movie. And then I was 14 when Episode 3 came out, and I remember being in denial about how much I didn't like the movie. Me and my
Oh.
brother were both like, do we not like this anymore? Because again, that year I was getting into deeper films. I was getting into more like, I just saw those Star Wars movies as so fake.
Mm-hmm.
When before I liked it because I was a kid and I liked all the CGI and I liked all the Yoda fights and all that. But I got older, I was like, this isn't very good, is it? And so we saw the movie 5 times, but I remember being like forcing myself to like it. Like, it's really good. Keep going. It's the last Star Wars movie. This is it. And then little did we know, a few years later, they'd be shoving Star Wars down our throats until we choked.
We're gonna do a podcast on that too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's a separate episode.
So I think Star Wars Episode 2, we saw 4 times, and that was a record.
Okay.
And then we went Revenge of the Sith. Like, we kept going, and then it was one of those things where like, it's gonna be out of theaters. Let's go again, and it ended up being 5. I remember that, and that was the first movie I saw 5 times. And then literally for years, not until Dunkirk, which was similar to Maverick, where they had real aerial, and it was like World War II, which is like another thing I'm obsessed with. So that movie was like World War II, Christopher Nolan, and a lot of real aerial footage with like Spitfires. Yeah. So I ended up seeing that 4 times, and then one more time as like a re-release. So I saw that movie 5 times. So that was like always my record. And then when Top Gun came out, I was like, I'm beating my record. And I ended up seeing it 8 times. And who knows, maybe I'll go 1 or 2 more times before it's out of theaters. But yeah, I'm at 8. I can't believe it. Because it doesn't feel like I've seen it 8 times. And I feel like you feel the same way.
I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, because like Revenge of the Sith felt like 5 times. That felt like the probably the last 3 or 4. It was like, okay, I guess it's good.
Yeah.
But this movie, I mean, every time you saw it, it's just like, oh yes, the sequence is coming up, or I mean, we still need to discuss the third act, because that's the third act of this movie is the best third act I've ever seen.
Yeah, we're gonna get it.
But yeah, 8 times. I can't believe it. Because like I said, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like 8 times. You'd think you'd be like, all right, like when you first get into a song and you just listen to the song too much and you're just like, oh my God, would I ruin the song for myself?
Right. Yeah.
But this movie seems to, I mean, I'm a rewatcher anyway. I live to rewatch my favorite films, and I'll upgrade them. Like, I'll buy Blu-rays, and now I'm buying 4Ks on my favorite movies. And I like to see that, like, especially old movies, because they get remastered and they clean them up, and I'm a big fan of that. Like, I think they call it a video file, which I hate. I hate being like in like a club, because I'm not in a club, but like there's people on the internet that have the same obsession as me. I just don't like to admit it. But a lot of movies from like the 90s, Top Gun, the 4K Top Gun is just great. So yeah, I love that. And I grew up, so I watched Top Gun on VHS.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about this. You've seen it on like probably VHS,
and
DVD,
then I've seen it on
Blu-ray.
VHS, on like old TVs that were square TVs.
Yeah.
You don't get the full scope that they wanted. They used to chop the sides off to fit your square TV. I remember when I was a kid, because we hated when DVDs came out, they had the widescreen, they had the black bars, and everyone hated it because we didn't know what was happening. We're like, why are we looking at black bars? And then finally I started learning about film and how it's done. And I'm like, oh no. So they chopped the sides off to make it fill our TV. We're not getting anything out of that. They're ruining the movie.
Right.
So then finally widescreen came more commercial, and realized, okay, the black bars are there for a reason. It's all calmed down. But yeah, then we got the DVD of Top Gun. Then I got an HD DVD, which doesn't exist anymore. And then the 4K now, which is just like, it's great. I mean, especially like seeing just the detail enhanced on these jets as the times go on. You see everyone sweat better in the volleyball scene.
Well, even Cougar and I think Ice too, but Cougar at the opening scene of Top Gun, when Maverick goes back to get him when he's all, Twitter pated, like just watching his sweat roll off of his face. Yeah, I really enjoyed that in a weird way. And that sounds odd, but he actually
they're very sweaty,
distraught. Yes.
Very sweaty. I think they had Vaseline on them, because it's hard. People don't realize it's hard to look sweaty, even though it's so weird because the lights, especially back then, lights are so bright and they're so hot.
Yeah.
So like you're sweating a lot, but it's drying the sweat because you're being cooked by these lights. So they would have to put like gelatin and all this crazy baby oil and stuff on there to keep you looking slippery. That movie is funny. Everyone's just sweating. I'm like, man, I wonder, is life in the Navy, like, are you just sweating all the time?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
It's definitely an aesthetic that works for that movie, but it's funny how this movie's a good example of like, you can't just copy that for modern audiences. Like you can't, like if everyone was sweating all the time in this movie, it would be weird, right? Because this movie has a very clear like objective from the beginning. There's the objective for the plot, but there's also like the emotional underlying kind of story outlet for Maverick.
Yeah.
But the first movie, there really wasn't a plot. It was kind of just like these guys are being trained, and then like at the end, a little conflict happens that needs to, hit these marks in the screenplay, but there's not like a plot and a mission. And this new movie is like, it does so well with like understanding what this mission is and training for it and doing the mission. And like I went into before, I think that's where McHugh comes in because he's credited with the screenplay. And I think he added that because they've been working on this with the Mission Impossible films. Here's our mission. It's impossible, this mission. We all have to work together as a team. And all that comes from Cruise himself making these films. Teamwork and execution. And it just seems so, and that's what I love about this movie and all the Mission Impossible movies is, yes, you're watching Maverick, but you're also watching Tom Cruise work, which is like, for me, very interesting in itself because I'm just fascinated by what he's been doing with film. He's not just acting, he's making these films. He's producing them. He's working on the stories with these guys. Everything is teamwork and everything is to accomplish the same goal. And I like that he works that into these movies. And this one in particular is really well done.
Yeah. So before we get into like some of the more gritty details of the movie, you were talking about the F-18 a little bit earlier and then we stopped talking about, do you want to continue on the F-18 and about how it's kind of going out?
Oh yeah. With the F-18. So when I was growing up, it was all F-18 Hornets. The Tomcat was on its way out. I think the last one flew in the U.S. Navy in 2006. It was done. But I don't even remember seeing one fly. I'm sure they were flying when I was a kid, but I didn't know. But I know it was all Hornets when I was a kid, F-18s. And I guess I don't know all the details, but they were supposed to be phased out, and then new planes were supposed to come in, but the U.S. military didn't want to spend that money, so they turned the F-18 into the F-18 Super Hornet, which is what this movie is. They kind of just add some stealth features to the already existing planes. So now we have Super Hornets, and you can tell, if you're really into it, you can look at them. You can see there's different vents look a little bit different. These are more rectangular. They used to be more ovals on the side. So if you do your research, you can tell the difference. But what's funny is like, so this movie was being developed in 2018, and the Super Hornets are kind of getting, they're still flying and stuff, but they were getting phased out for the F-35 stealth, which is mentioned in the movie. But they couldn't use the F-35 because they wanted to do the filming for real, and there's no two-seater F-35. But they have a bunch of two-seater F-18s, so they knew if they used the F-18, they could shoot the actors for real in that back seat. So that's why it's kind of funny that, like, he even says in the beginning, like, oh, this would be an in and out for the F-35 stealth, but he says something like the radar negates that, so this will be in and out for the F-18.
The GPS, yeah. Is the F-35 what they call in the movie? Are they calling those the fifth generation, or are those different?
I think F-35s are fifth generation, but they're referring to the enemy's planes, which
okay.
They are real planes. I forget what they're called. Yeah, they just say fifth gen fighters, which are like the top of. I mean, they're insane.
Yeah.
Like our equivalent to that are the Air Force's F-22 Raptors, which I guess is like the sickest plane like ever. But those things are really dope, and yeah, it was cool to see them in action. And I mean, plane nerds like me love seeing the old F-14, just take those on and just I can't explain to you. I know a lot of people love the ending because it's really well done. And then we know we're in spoiler territory, right? Like, So
yeah.
You know, for like 3 years, I've been like trying to figure out what this movie was going to be about, how are they going to do everything, and then when third act starts and they're doing the mission.
Do you want to just say where the third act starts?
So the third act for me starts right after he hugs Penny and he's looking out the ocean, and then it shows the carrier. They're on the carrier. That's for me. That's third.
You're where you belong. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. And then so they do the mission, and the sequence is amazing. It's so tense, and you know what the stakes are. It's so, I mean, this movie's been setting up for this mission like the whole time. Everybody knows what's going on. Everyone knows how dangerous it is, how hard it is to pull off. It's so great. And I think like all of it, most of it was shot for real, you know.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, because you and I had talked in between, like when I had saw the movie the first time, and then when I went to go see it the second time, like you and I had talked on the phone, and you had got more into, you started talking about planes. Cause like, I don't know planes at all, other than like, I check my bag, I get in, go to the airport, get on a plane to go somewhere. Other than that, I don't know planes. And I didn't think that having some knowledge about planes would increase my experience of watching, but I totally missed the part with the F-14. Like I did not capture
everyone
the
did. Like I'm saying, that's part of like it elevated like even my understanding of like I can't wait for this movie, and then or my excitement, and it just elevated my excitement that much more because like I said, like the F-14. I mean, Top Gun made that a movie star in itself. And if you're like into planes or you're in the military, like you know what the Tomcat is, and what that means to Maverick. Like I remember when I don't know, I remember when they were like, oh, I was like, what are they flying? When I first found out there was gonna be a new Top Gun, I was like, what are they gonna fly? And there was like the Hornet, and I was like, oh, that's cool, because the Hornet was like my jet. I've always loved the Hornets. I've been watching the Hornets my whole life, but part of me was like, it just doesn't seem right to not have Maverick in an F-14. And I'm like, I know it doesn't make sense, and I know in the trailer they showed a shot of F-14 fly like. And I remember thinking, like, what the heck? What's that going to be? Is he like going to be flying an old one? Because like the U.S. does not have F-14s that are flying. They're all museum. Like they call it a museum piece.
Well,
that's what it is.
Rooster literally does. Yeah, how are we going to get this museum piece in the air?
Yeah, and they say it earlier when they're talking about, because when Hangman's bragging, they're saying like, someone else did it. They're talking about Maverick when he did it, and they say in some museum piece, 30 years ago.
From the Cold War or something.
From the Cold War, yeah. And but I was always just like, how. And then and I remember thinking, so my brain is working like, okay, Tom Cruise has to be flying that F-14, but how? So I'm watching the movie. We're in the third act. We'll say 3A, which would be the mission part of the third act, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets shot down, and Rooster gets shot down, and they're behind enemy lines. And then it occurred to me the first time seeing it, I said, oh my God, they showed there was F-14s at this base. They said it.
And I
which is
missed that until you said that too, because you're like, they set it up perfectly, but they literally show the map of where
yeah,
their air runway or whatever is, and it says, and they even have a few of your F-14s.
yeah, and which
Yeah.
is accurate because we
Mhm.
sold all our F-14s because we have better planes. We sold
Right.
them to Iran and someone else.
Yeah.
So there are Tomcats flying in the world, just
Yeah.
not for the U.S.
Hmm.
So when they said that, I was like, oh, that's cool. That, when I saw it in the briefing scene, I was like, that's a cool, you know. But it didn't even occur to me until him and Rooster were going. He saw it, and he looked through the binoculars, and I said, oh my God. I was like, I looked over to Christina, my wife, and I was like, they're good. I was like, Maverick and Rooster are going to get an F-14, and Rooster's going to be Goose, and they're going to fly an F-14. I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, I could tell I'm the only person that was like picking up on this.
I didn't until you said
No, yeah.
something, and that's one of
To
the
like every
reasons
other
I want to
audience,
talk
they were
about
just like, oh, there's a plane we can fly. Yay. But to me, I was like, no, you don't. I wanted to stand up in the theater and be like, do you guys understand what's happening? I was like, and then like they're going through they're doing the check. I was just like, this is so fucking cool. I was just
it.
nerding out.
Do you want to
And
tell
then,
us what was happening? Like exactly.
well, I was just,
Like,
well, just like, I
yeah.
just like that Maverick is like, it's like, and this is true. These pilots that fly these planes,
Yeah.
they say the same thing. They sit in that cockpit and it all comes back. They know all the checklists. They know everything. It could be
Yeah.
30 years. They know all the lingo.
Uh-huh.
And to see Tom Cruise Maverick doing that
Uh-huh.
and telling Rooster what to do, all the protocols, I was just like, this is it. I've waited for this my whole life. I didn't even like know it.
Yeah.
And I just love that. That's honestly, that's why I've seen it 8 times, is
Yeah.
because of that scene. And I realized I listened to a podcast. I don't know if you listened to it yet with the
I
director.
haven't.
He said in that podcast that was his pitch for the movie, that the whole movie was written around that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Tom Cruise, this is what Top Gun Maverick's going to be. It's going to be Maverick and Goose's son are going to be shot down behind enemy lines. They're going to get an old F-14 and they're going to have to fight their way back home. And Tom Cruise was like, we're making Top Gun 2. Like that's what sold him, that whole sequence.
Yeah. That's so cool.
But yeah, so they take off on because they blew up all the runways. So they only have a taxiway, and it's in Maverick. They take off in that F-14 full afterburner, like, barely make it up. And then I'm thinking like, I wasn't even thinking like, oh, they're going to have to dogfight those fighters that he was talking about. I was just like, that's so cool. They're in an F-14, and then they're in the air. And then Maverick Tally 2, and then there's the two 5th gen fighters, and then there's just that incredible dogfight scene where like, man, I like Cruise's acting in that scene is so good. I mean, his face is covered the whole time, but his like emotion, the impact of what's happening. Like he's not just Goose's son, but his son is behind him.
Yeah.
In a
You
third,
could feel
not
it.
even a third. The plane's almost 50 years old. It was developed in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that Rooster's the one that tells him like, you would do this if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
You want to do this. You're Maverick. You want to take on these 5th gens, and this thing is like, you are where you belong, son, in an F-14. And the fact when he just does it, he just cranks that thing over and he takes out that it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's go back to the premiere, because something incredible happened with me that I never thought would happen.
Yeah. So before you talk about it, this was one of the things that made me want to go see the movie. And I'll talk about this in the intro, but you and I have known each other for 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like the most excited I have ever seen you about a movie. Like you had talked about movies, and when we were in film school together, you and John would rant about movies. I'm like, who are these two people? Like the only thing that I know more about than these two know about movies is like horses. And I had never seen you so excited. And just as like one of my best friends, I'm like, okay, if he is this excited about it, I'm like, I have to go see this movie. And even what you're about to talk about, like you were sending me videos and you were just so happy. And I had to go see it. So yes, please tell us about the preview.
Yeah. So I saw in somebody's Instagram, I don't know if it was like, I follow a lot of movie stuff or someone in the movie, they said, or I heard on the radio, they said the premiere of Top Gun Maverick is going to be at the U.S. Midway. And I was like, what? So I'm like, online, how do I get tickets? Like, can I buy a ticket to the Midway and like get a ticket for that day? And like everything was like sold out. And then they said it's closed for an event. I was like, crap. And then I was just like, this was probably 2 weeks prior when I figured it out. And I'm telling my buddy Chris, he's also into military. Like, that's how we became friends. We kind of had similar interests. He loves Top Gun. Not as much as me, probably, but
yeah,
you know,
okay.
I was telling him, I was like, man, it's on the Midway. And he was saying, I was like, it's on a Wednesday. I was like, you know, why don't we just go down there and get as close as we can get, see what we can see. Like, let's just do it. Like, screw it. And he's like, that's fine. That's cool. Yeah. I'll take a half day off work. We went down there. I think it started at 3. We actually went over to there's a famous bar here downtown, which is about a couple blocks from the Midway, where the piano scene was filmed for the first movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I had never really been in there. I always knew it was there. And I was like, let's just go. Let's have lunch at it's called Kansas City Barbecue. Like, let's go have a Top Gun day.
Yeah.
So we went in there. We were watching I think the Padre game was on. It was a very San Diego day, and it was beautiful. And I had moved back a few months before. Some stuff happened. It's been a crazy year, like with stuff with my mom and everything. And then I was just like, dude, we're getting on that boat. I was like, I don't know what we have to do. I was like, we are getting on that freaking boat. So we have a good time at the Top Gun bar. It's kind of cool. They have a bunch of memorabilia in there. Yeah. The piano was there. And it was funny, Miles Teller was there at the piano like earlier that day. We saw on Instagram. Like the cast had stopped by there. He took a picture by the piano where his, dad played the piano. So we stopped by there, have some barbecue, and we start walking over to the Midway. And we get to there's one entrance to the parking lot. And we saw that we were trying to see what people were doing. We're like, do we need tickets? Like, what do you need? And we see people he's asking for Vax cards. And I'm like, so we're like, okay, we have those. So we get ours out, show it to him. He lets us through and we're like, oh my God, we're halfway there. We're almost there. So we get up, we walk over. I'm starting to see a bunch of black SUVs, and I'm starting to recognize actors. And I saw Glenn Powell plays Hangman. I was like, that's Glenn Powell. I was like, that's Hangman. I was like, we're almost there. I was like, because he was right there going up. And then we get to the ticket taker guys, and we just said hey, do we need tickets for this? And the guy literally says, nope, you did before, but not anymore. And he puts a wristband. I still have it. Yeah. Give us a little wristband, Top Gun Maverick, and we were in. We just walk up, and there was a fan section. Because they wanted to look like it was busy, and I think not enough people bought tickets. Because San Diego's pretty bad at getting a memo for an event.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
But they wanted to look full, and I mean, it did fill up, but it was we were just like, dude, what's happening? What's happening? And we kept saying, I can't believe it's happening. This is the premiere. This is the premiere.
Yeah.
And it was on the Midway, and it was so San Diego, and it was so dope. And then Tom Cruise himself got helicoptered in, landed right on the deck, and walked over. And I was like, this is happening. It was this is not happening. So we took a bunch of pictures. Yeah. We were in the stands, so it's not but we saw him. He came up. He said hi to everybody. We saw Miles Teller. We saw everybody. Yeah. John Hamm, Jennifer Connelly. And then they're like, all right, guys, got to go. So we're leaving. And then this lady comes back who's just another fan. And she said, Tom Cruise is coming back to take pictures. So we just turned around. And then so now we were in the front, just sit, we were right on the rail, because before we were kind of in the back. And sure enough, Tom Cruise came back, and he was right there. And that's why you've seen those pictures that we're in the back of.
Yeah. I was wondering how you got so close. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was there, and he was just cool with all the fans. And yeah, we just got to hang out there for a little bit. And it was just the best day. And then we went. And then the funny thing was, I parked my car, and we had the 2 hours or whatever. And I was looking at Chris, and I was like, we're getting a ticket, but I don't care. Because, and then we got to the car, and there was no ticket.
So it's literally just all meant to be.
And the funny thing was, we got there, and some guy goes, hey, you guys, I don't need this ticket. You guys can use this ticket. There's an hour and a half on there. I was like, okay. So we didn't pay for parking. We got everything was just going our way that day.
That was crazy.
And they showed us a little sneak preview of the movie, which was the first time Maverick was flying around with them. The scene. The first jet sequence, really.
Yeah.
and yeah, so that was like super stoked. And I think this was like early May, so it was like the longest 4 weeks of my life from when the movie came out.
I'm sure.
I was just like, man. But that was so cool that we were there, and then we are in pictures. You've seen them.
Uh-huh.
Like it's one of those cemented things that I'm so like I lived in LA for 10 years. I never would have went to a movie premiere like that just for with all the hassle. But the fact
Mhm.
that it was in San Diego, I had just come back. Like this movie has been like a big influence. Like I didn't join the military, but like it got me into like military movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just like meant to be. Like I was meant to be there, and it just happened, and it was so cool.
Yeah.
And it was free too.
I
I
know.
would have paid
That's
$50 probably. I was like, all right, if we can get tickets, I'll pay $50, but we didn't have to pay.
yeah. That is crazy.
Yeah, it was very cool. And then, yeah, it was just so cool. Nothing like that will
Yeah.
ever happen again, and nothing like that significant, like a movie like that, and Tom Cruise, and like,
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, and I don't know if they'll do it. Who knows with the movie industry, but I don't think they realize like how rare it is to have a sequel 36 years later that is that good. And so in a way it would be cool if they took some notes, but at the same time I hope they don't start doing like what they did with Disney live action movies and just go back and start remaking all these,
yeah,
movies or
unfortunately, Hollywood
sequels.
is a trendy. They follow trends. It's always been
True.
about, oh, this made it big. How can we capitalize? And what's funny is like
Yeah.
they've already been doing this.
Mhm.
Especially Disney, they just remake their own stuff that people know because no one takes a chance.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because it's been like it's been getting so old seeing all
Yeah.
these sequels come out, but then here comes
Mhm.
Top Gun Maverick that said this is how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Which typical Maverick, right?
yeah,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm always disappointed in these legacy sequels,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
But here's one that's like, okay, we're not just remaking the first movie, but
Mhm.
the references will be very like sewn in very clearly, but like
Mhm.
not stupidly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a great like, all right, what's this character doing now? What
Mhm.
has he been up to? And then like this, it didn't disappoint, and he got to, you know, he got to fly in the Navy again because it's not like they made it like a realistic like, okay, that makes sense that he could be doing this. He showed them that he can complete this thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he's still a captain, like he's because you can't have Maverick being an admiral and telling guys what to
No.
do. No, he
No.
has that great line. He says, "I'm a fighter pilot. It's not what I am; it's who I am."
Yeah.
And that because at the end of
Yeah.
the first movie, it's just kind of a throwaway thing, like, "What are you gonna do next, buddy?" And he's like, "I thought about being an instructor." And it's just like, I'm so glad they said, "No, I lasted 3 months. It wasn't for me." Blah, because I'm like, yeah, dude. Even in this one, he knew like I'm not a teacher. He just kept saying, "I'm not a teacher. Like
Yeah.
not where I belong." And then
Yeah.
it was just so well done, and
Mhm.
like not how like okay, so I keep thinking of Force Awakens because I hate it so much, and it seems so just corporate, friggin' everything is
Bullshit.
just bullshit. And
Yeah.
I know it works for some people, but I sat in that theater and I was like, "Fuck off!" and
I,
I
I
and
think the excitement that there was another Star Wars movie, like how you were
no,
talking
I
about you
was
made
super
yourself like
yeah.
Attack of the third Revenge of the
Revenge,
Sith,
yeah,
like how you made
exactly.
yourself like it. I feel like a lot of people, because even for me, you and I are only 5 years apart in age. We were young enough, like it wouldn't have been significant enough to go see the prequels technically in theaters. So I feel like with Star Wars, that's more what it was with the sequels, is there was a generation that was old enough finally to go see Star Wars in theaters and they made themselves like it, even if it was awful. It was
Yeah, no,
awful.
there definitely was that. And it's funny because
Hmm.
I saw Force Awakens. It came out around the same time I met you. It was 2015.
Oh yeah.
Like
So
and I
funny. Yeah.
remember working on our friend's movie, Carol. We were working on her movie, and I was thinking because I was really excited for it because Star Wars is like my first love. Like
Right.
anyone kid my age or a little bit younger, like Star Wars was what made us fucking stoked about movies
Hmm.
because it just is what it is. So I
Yeah.
was super excited. The trailers looked really good.
Hmm.
I remember telling her, like saying, Carol, what time do you think we're going to be done? Because I got tickets to Star Wars. And I was just like, and she's like, we'll be done early. And I was like, yes.
I
And what's funny
remember
is I
that
have a picture.
actually.
That's when you came to visit. I have a picture of you and Carol. And it was that day. I remember just being like, I can't wait to go see the new Star Wars. I have tickets. Like, I have time because we didn't have any time at that point in our lives. But
No.
I had time and I had tickets to go see the new Star Wars. And I was so excited. And I sat in that theater and I was like, I looked at Christina at one point. I said, this isn't good. And I was like, this isn't good. And then I was just mad. I was like, this wasn't good. It sucked. And people were like acting like it was good. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
it was not good.
Yeah.
It was really bad, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's for another thing, another time, the Star Wars discussion. But they're similar. These movies are, what I was getting at, these movies are very similar. They have a 30 plus year time gap. There's characters that we have to know what's up with them.
Mm-hmm.
But Star Wars did it in such a like awkward way where I was like, I feel like I'm disconnected from these characters. Like they had the son who's like a Sith. I'm just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Top Gun did it so well where it's like you understand what happened with him and Rooster. Like,
yeah,
it feels like something that would happen. Like you understand it. Mm-hmm. And then it ties it up so well at the end. You didn't need two other stupid movies to tie up that like arc, you know?
Yeah.
And Star Wars was just like, yeah, no, like, yeah, it's their kid or whatever.
Yeah. And I loved what you said about, I can't remember how you worded it, but it was something like Goose may be Rooster's father, but Maverick is his dad or something like that,
well,
because
there's a line
Goose was so young.
In Guardians of the Galaxy 2, not my favorite Marvel movie, but I love this line, and it's a line I think about a lot. Have you seen Guardians 2?
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Yeah, that scene where he says, he might be your father, but he ain't your daddy or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like because that character was so obsessed with finding his dad, but it's like, no, you had a dad the whole time in Yondu. And it's the same kind of thing. And that shit gets me every time. I think it's just so like, and there was a part that you didn't realize this. You saw it 5 times and until I pointed it out to you.
You didn't have to mention that I didn't catch it, but no, I didn't.
Well, it's funny because Christina is actually the one that pointed it out to me. When Rooster says, talk to me, dad, it's kind of a play on talk to me, Goose. Talk to me, dad.
Right.
And it cuts to Maverick and he says, come on, kid, you can do this. So it's like,
I'm getting emotional.
That's your dad, dude.
Yeah. That part was really cool for me too, because, there was this conflict this whole time. And for me, there was still the tension of, they're getting ready to load up in the planes to go on the mission. And Rooster walks over to Maverick and was like, sir, he's like, I just wanted to tell you. And then he's like, we'll talk when we get back. But there's this thing in the back of your mind, like, we don't know if they're going to come back. Yeah. Like, in a way we do. The first time I saw it, I was waiting for Maverick to die. There was something in the back of my head that I was like, there's a chance I think they'll kill him off. I don't know if they actually will or not. But that was in the back of my head. And so it's like, they may not make up. I don't know at this point. And,
it could have definitely ended this movie could have ended in Maverick sacrificing himself for Rooster and Rooster realizing that he was his dad the whole time. Like, it could have had that ending and we would all have been destroyed. Because that scene where he does the Cobra maneuver and saves Rooster and gets shot down, man, my heart, I've never felt a scene like that. I was like, no.
And Miles
in my head, I'm like,
great
no,
job.
He's not dead, dude. He's not dead. But you're definitely, because they're kind of setting it up.
Yeah.
And then, so they do that. And then it's like, oh, of course. He hasn't even flown that F-14 yet. But then they do it again when he's flying up and he's like, I'm sorry, Goose. And I'm just like, no, dude.
Oh, that was, because you just see it. And this is where I think Tom Cruise did such a great job. You could just see it. It's not like he's going to lose his life. It's not like his, He was
acting with his eyes only, flying in a jet. And I don't know if they could have redone his lines later.
Yeah.
Because he had wearing a mask and they were saying that they could, but even still, like, his performance in that last scene, I mean, it's incredible. It's so good. You understand his emotions with his headset, everything that was going through, just having Rooster go for like picking Rooster for the mission, it was all there, and it was the stakes were very high for like the drama that this movie set up. And it was just like that third act was the first time seeing it, even like the 8th time seeing it, was the same, just tense and like so good.
Well, and for me too, I was thinking about it because what is it, John Hamm, his character?
Mm-hmm.
Is that him? Cyclone, that was his call sign was. So like when Cyclone's talking, because Maverick at one point and says, "How to come home, sir," like you're supposed to teach him XYZ, and then Maverick throws in how to come home. And really, Maverick, in my opinion, is one of those people, like he knows everything has his risk. And had this been any other mission, I don't know that he would have been so focused on getting them to come home. But now you throw Rooster in the mix, and that becomes like number one priority is get the mission done and have them come home.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have just been obviously it wouldn't have been the movie had Rooster not been in there, because then the movie would be pointless. But I feel like that was just the whole underlying thing, is like, get my son home.
Yeah. Then there's the whole the dilemma, like he had to pick Rooster to show him that he believed he was ready, because if he would resent him if he didn't pick him for the mission. But he had to pick him, but he also had to make sure he got it alive. And then they literally
lose him either way.
Yeah, and so it was all set up just so well, and I just felt like even the average moviegoer understood the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like, to most people, they just found a jet and flew home. But for like us, for like nerds like me, like he didn't just find a jet; he found an F-14, and because the first movie was great. We saw Maverick was flying the F-14.
Mm-hmm.
He shot down 2 people, but I felt like, man, there is not one moment where I do not feel like not just Maverick, but Tom Cruise is flying that freaking jet. And it was so well done.
Yeah.
It's just like, just the way he's reacting to even something as mundane as like missing the guy with the missile. I'm just like, there's so much tension. Like, oh my God, like you only have 4 shots or 2 shots or whatever it was. And then he only has a certain amount of, it's one thing the first movie didn't really show, was that they don't have a lot of rounds in these jets. And when they shoot, man, you're losing like, hundreds of rounds, and you probably only have 500 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie just did such a good job of showing us, like, he only has this amount of bullets, this amount of missiles. Like, this is like, it's not a video game. Like,
yeah,
these guys can die, like, and I probably should die.
Mm-hmm.
So I just love that scene so much. And I always feel like every couple of years there's a sequence or something from a movie that I just like, that's like it.
Yeah.
And then something comes and goes, nope, this is it. But this one is like it.
Well, and even the ejection handles not working. Yeah. And then for me, and I don't think you and I have talked about this, but obviously the thought of Rooster ejecting is like terrifying me, because obviously
I don't know if this was like intentional. I know he says we need altitude and he goes up, and I'm thinking, like, did he go up so the canopy he'll make sure the canopy like flies off?
Oh,
I don't know if that's what I think of. I'm like, he's definitely like, all right, if canopy will not kill you if we're going straight up. Yeah, but I just love that. Like, Rooster, that's the only way. Like, just go. Like, you have to eject. Like, I really like feel that it's the best performance he's had. And I mean, he's always good, but
I even really enjoyed his performance with Ice, because, in Maverick, Ice can't speak, and hearing his internal conflict out loud and just like the look on his face, like the angst, and also he's not a teacher, but he feels like he has to, because it's like his mission to get Rooster out of this alive. Like, you could feel all of that. And I'm like, technically he's acting with himself. I mean, obviously Val Kilmer's there, and, they incorporated him, but he can't speak. And there's so many, and even making the computer screen work. I usually hate when they do that stuff.
And what's funny is, like, when I first saw the movie, every time I saw like his cell phone, I told you this the other day, or like, seeing text on a computer screen, you're kind of like, this is what you came up with. But the more times you see it, those scenes work so much better. And they really like, just, they made, because there's a point, Val Kilmer himself can't speak, but they wrote in Iceman has a similar affliction or whatever.
Right.
But he literally has to type out stuff to Maverick, and like he types, "It's time to let go," and then it shows that twice, and not just shows that, but it shows how it affects Maverick, and it really drives it home. And it's like they made that work. Like, and Val Kilmer deserves so much credit for what he did.
Oh my gosh,
for how good he was in that scene where he can't even speak.
He does. Yeah.
And that breaks my heart, man, because like I said, I grew up in Val Kilmer movies. They were always on in my house in the 90s. And yeah, I'm so glad they made that work. But
well, and for me too, I, don't follow this stuff as closely as you do. So I didn't know Val Kilmer was sick. And so at first, the first time I saw it, same thing. I'm like, man, why are they showing a phone? Like, why isn't Val Kilmer? Because I saw Val Kilmer's name on screen, so I knew he was in it. And then when, Maverick goes to his house, for me, it was almost foreshadowing in a way. It was like, oh, got it.
Yeah. I didn't know, because I heard they did something to get his voice back. So I thought maybe I didn't think he was going to be sick in the movies, but it made sense that he was texting him, because it's like, okay, you're foreshadowing that he has no voice. Like, he's not leaving you voicemails. He's texting you for a reason.
Right.
And then obviously using his death as similar to the Goose death in the first movie, that legacy death at the same time in the story that really needs to like they needed someone like him to die for that emotional weight, because they couldn't have like one of the pilots die, because although it would have been horrible for him, I feel like they needed like a legacy character to die.
Yeah, and I felt like too, in a way, Maverick was kicking his feet. He was so kind of wrapped up in the struggle with not wanting to send Rooster on this mission, but also knowing if he didn't, he was going to lose him either way. And so in a way, I felt like Maverick was kicking his feet by really showing him how it's done. And then Val Kilmer or Iceman passing. And then that scene he has with Jennifer Connelly about like, if you were up in the air, you wouldn't just leave your men to fate, basically. And then, that scene, that's actually one of my favorite scenes, is when he just comes in like, there's no authorized whatever today.
No, that scene. Yeah. It is so good. And that's a scene where every time I saw it, people were clapping, like people understood.
Yeah.
And even in the beginning, it just touches me. Every time I see it touches me more when he does the Dark Star and they say, you know what'll happen to you. And if it doesn't work, and he says, I know what'll happen to everyone else if it doesn't. Like he's putting all those people ahead of himself. I'm just like, that's Maverick, man. And that's Tom Cruise too. Like that's Tom talking about like if the film industry was dying, the crew members that make these movies happen. That really is what he's talking about. He cares so much, and like the fact that he like puts that in these movies, it's like it every time I see it, I'm just like, man, it touches me. And then it shows those crew members in the control room, because what's happening is the Ed Harris, they call him the Drone Ranger, because and they want to do this in real life. They want to phase out human pilots for drones. So Maverick going Mach 10 is keeping humans at the controls a little bit longer, even if it's for however long. So
I did listen to a podcast with a real Top Gun pilot. He was on Jocko Willing's podcast, and he said one of his favorite things about this whole movie was how they kept hammering in, it's not the plane, it's the pilot.
Yeah. And there's some truth to that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I love like just Tom Cruise aging. There's a sequence in the last Mission Impossible. There's a car chase with an old M5, which again, it's close to me because I grew up. My dad drove a 91 M5, which I refuse to get rid of because I love it so. Even though it's not, it's a temperamental beast.
Yeah.
But I grew up with that car, and so in this Mission Impossible, they drove. It's a little bit older of a model than the one that I grew up with, but it was an M5 from the 80s. and he really wanted to do a car chase in like an old car around Europe, like an old European car. And they were like, we'll give you a brand new BMW. Like, and he's like, no, it has to be this car. And he drives it himself. And it's another great chase scene from Tom Cruise movies. But I like how he's an older guy. And he likes to show this older machinery taking on new stuff. So he did it with cars, and even this one, he has his original motorcycle in the beginning.
That was so cool.
The fact that he gets in like, the F-14 to take on the new crazy planes and beats them is just like, it's so, and it's a great metaphor for how Tom Cruise is so cooler than any of these new guys that are coming along any day of the week.
I loved that scene. It was so simple, but when he went back to Top Gun and was riding his bike back into, it's like you could just feel the like shit-eating grin on his face, and how
the music, the theme hitting there. It's incredible.
It is. So I haven't asked you what your favorite scene is.
In the new one?
Both, but yeah, let's start with the first one, and then
it's funny.
Maverick.
I don't know if I definitely know what my favorite scene is. I mean, it's pretty obvious what my favorite scene is in the new one, but I don't think I ever thought about what my favorite scene is in the original Top Gun. I wonder if I think about it. I wonder if I can come up with something. I kind of just love that movie for what it is. I really don't think I have like oh my God, I love this scene. But I guess, God, I don't, I know like the Goose's death scene is like, hurts the most.
Right.
And it's probably the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
But, man, I don't know. Pretty much like anything that just has the like them walking next to all the tomcats.
Yeah.
Like I always like the scene where he comes back after trying to go up again after Goose's death, and he gets put with Sundown. Is the guy's name.
Yeah.
And I like when he yells at him on the
I will fire.
Like it's just not working out. Like, that duo's not working out. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But I guess I love when he does the flybys.
Yeah.
But that's not really a scene. It's more just like, but I love when the guy spills coffee on himself. And it's like he would be so out of the Navy in real life if he did that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, we should talk about that too. This movie was very good about putting references to the first movie without being like
on the nose.
On the nose.
Yeah.
And when he does the flyby at the end, and it's not like he did it on purpose, like the first movie he did it on purpose, but he does it, and John Hamm like,
oh my gosh, he's like, you saw it. Yeah.
That music cue hits right there. I'm like, oh man, even when I listen to the soundtrack, that part kills me.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And it's made with such like, because real fans know, man, he just buzzed the tower. Like he wasn't like, I'm going to buzz the tower. Like it wasn't like in the first movie. He just did it though, because he had to turn around. And I just love that. It's like the music hits right there, and they got the original composer back.
Yeah.
And it's just like, cool. You feel it right there. Like waiting for people been waiting over 30 years to see him do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that whole end sequence, and then them on the carrier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been an emotional ride 8 times. It's been an emotional ride watching that sequence.
Mm-hmm. When he grabs Rooster and is like, thank you for saving my life, like the look on his face, I'm like,
I know.
So I know you like the third act you've talked about, but is there a specific scene in the third act that is your favorite?
The dogfight with the F-14 is my favorite scene in any movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the fuck's going to top it. I really don't. But that scene and the scene where he proves that the course can be done, and he does it in the most Maverick way by just taking the plane out there. And while John Hamm is like, I love both those scenes, but the F-14 dogfight is like cinematic perfection, just the way it looks. And I guess they didn't even, because they weren't flying in an F-14 because we don't have one that flies. So I guess they digitally erased the F-18 and but I was like, I'm like, how? It looks so good.
Yeah.
And then you see the explosions. I don't know how they did that. It looks so good.
Yeah.
When all the missiles are blowing up behind them. And I'm just like, how did they do that? Because they're really flying. But I mean, obviously they weren't blowing up missiles behind them, I don't think. but the CG was integrated incredibly well. And this should win an Oscar. It probably won't. Some stupid movie, probably Avatar 2 or something. But I'm like, this movie is seamless. You don't even know it's there, and that's how it should be.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
This better win cinematography because like what they were able to do, flying those cameras up there. I mean, that's super cool.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's crazy how just, I don't know, like the story's good. And that's one of the reasons. Well, I'll ask you first. Is there one you like better than the other? Top Gun versus Top Gun Maverick?
It's like, I kind of tell myself like Top Gun Maverick is the better movie in terms of like, you know, having this plot and like everything coming together, and it's like a better movie, but there's definitely like the first one is more like, I don't know how to explain it. Just because the history of it and it's more quotable and but Top Gun Maverick is like definitely the better like movie. Like
yeah.
But then again, like I have such a soft spot for the original Top Gun, and I've actually seen it on the big screen twice. I saw it with my friend in LA in a 70 millimeter, which was so cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And because I got to see like how it looked when it came out in 86, you know, because a lot of times old movies, the color will change, they'll remaster them, and they'll kind of do things. They'll, you know, they look better than they did, but I like to see like how it looked. And it definitely had like such a different look seeing it projected on film, especially 70 millimeter film. Just that's such a rare treat. So that was awesome. And then I saw it again in Dolby, literally when they opened up movie theaters again last year. It was one of the first movies we saw. And that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like at that time, I was like, cool, we'll see Top Gun later this year. And then it ended up being over a year.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about that because I like Maverick better because of the plot and like the emotional part of me. It's easier to like gather around. And then, you know, Bruce, and I've told you I have a super soft spot for Miles Teller. So there's a bunch of that makes me just like Maverick better. But I realize I wouldn't like Maverick as much as I do had it not been for Top Gun, because I love.
They complement each other. I would almost be okay with this movie being Top Gun Part 2, because I'm never going to watch Top Gun and not watch Top Gun Maverick right after.
That's so funny you say that.
That's like, how you know excited. A sequel is good.
Yeah.
Because when I watch The Godfather, I have to watch The Godfather Part 2, like immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
Because those movies to me are one movie. And I never watch Godfather 3 because it just makes me mad. And same with Back to the Future. You watch Back to the Future 1 and you're like, I want more. And you watch Back to the Future 2 and then never watch Back to the Future 3.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it just makes you mad because the first two are so fun. And then the third one's like, And the same thing for Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3 is like a stinker, but the first two are really good. And the Batman Begins and Dark Knight. Don't like Dark Knight Rises that much. But those two, it's like, I need more. Second one's going in. And this one is right there. This like, it's going to completely, I haven't, well, maybe that's not true. I haven't watched the whole first one again since seeing the second one. I've watched parts of it. But yeah, you're definitely going to be in your mind like, all right, I know it comes after 30 years after this, and it like works. It feels like real. It doesn't feel like, what did you do? Like when you watch Star Wars now, when I watch Return of the Jedi, I'm not thinking, oh, Rey's going to show up and Luke Skywalker is going to be mad and Han Solo's going to die. But it's like, I never think of that because it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like a genuine like connection to those movies. It feels like a...
Right. Like if the movie was real, in reality, that timeline wouldn't have happened. But if Top Gun was real, in reality, Maverick would have happened. Like he would have had like all of these problems. Iceman would be saving his ass all the time. He, you know, you and I, when I first saw it, you and I had a disagreement, I guess, because I was sad Charlie didn't come back. But then you're like, no, this works better. And, you know, you said they even referenced Penny Benjamin in the first one. And when I went and watched it again, I was like, no, that would make sense. Like he would have had this fling and then he would have had this on and off with this other chick and then ended up, I could totally see like him running back into her. And I like that. I like just the love with Penny Benjamin. I just like the love interest overall better. Like you and I had talked about this too. Like I like that she's more of a feminine role and then Maverick gets to be more masculine, where in the first Top Gun, Charlie was more the masculine role and Maverick felt more feminine, like he was chasing her. I didn't really like that as much, but that would have really happened. Like,
I mean, like I was telling you,
the same. Yeah.
I'm sure in an alternate universe, Kelly McGillis is still a big draw and they could have made it work.
Yeah.
But there's something about having like a previous fling. And again, they could have made it Charlie or whatever. But I also don't see Charlie hanging around 30 years later waiting for Maverick to come again. No. But having this, and it's another scene that gets me every time is when he jumps out of the window and then her daughter says, just don't break her heart again. And the look on his face is just like he realizes the hurt that he's caused this person and that he can, like, he's a good grown man and he could, like, he's just ready to like be her man. I don't know why I just get the look on his face, just like, ouch, man, that would hurt to realize that you did that. Because I'm sure he was making excuses for himself when he was younger.
Well, because he didn't. In the bar scene, when she's like, it always starts, or it always ends the same with us, Pete, let's not start again. He still gives her the look like, oh, you look good. Like he still doesn't get it. Yeah. And when her daughter says, just don't, it's like it snaps and he realizes, shit, what have I done?
Yeah. And speaking of the daughter, what do you think about that? Do you think it's his kid?
No.
No?
Really? Do you?
I just feel like they got an actress that looks like Tom Cruise for a reason. And I feel like because he looks at her in a way like it's very possible. I mean, you can tell that her dad, or you can tell that relationship isn't anything.
Right. Because he's like, where's your dad?
It's very possible that she had a thing with Maverick while she was with that guy. It's very possible.
It is possible. I felt like it was more of a parallel with Rooster, to be honest with you. Like he takes in these kids that aren't actually his. And I felt like if they end up getting together, in my head, that guy is her dad, but Maverick will be her father.
I'm glad. I guess I'm glad they didn't say like, oh, but I was kind of thinking like, how cool would it be if she found something in his garage that, like, I don't know, something from her being a kid or something. I'm like, that kind of would have been cool.
Yeah, but I also feel like that wouldn't make me like Maverick as much because like he's been Rooster's dad, but then he wasn't like her dad, and I, even as, big of a, cocky pilot that he can be, he does still have that heart, and that's what makes you like him. Like I told you, that's what I liked about the first Top Gun, was even though he's this cocky pilot, like he goes back and saves Cougar, even though they told him to land the plane and he was running out of fuel. Like he went and did the right thing. And I feel like the character, if he knew, like if he didn't know that it was his actual kid, it still would have went the same. But if he did, he was there for Rooster, so I feel like he would have been there, but maybe I'm just making a fantasy up in my head. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad it's like ambiguous, but I can't help thinking.
Yes. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it, so that's interesting. Because like I said, I felt like it was more of a similarity, like a parallel to Rooster. Like, because even Rooster says, no one cares when they get into the argument. I think after Ice right before Ice dies, when he was like, after Phoenix and Bob went down, and he's like, if you fly long enough, you'll lose your wingman. And he's like, easy for you to say, no wife, no kids. And, so I felt like it was just another similarity. He gets to go be her dad because her dad's off in Hawaii with his wife.
True.
But yeah, I don't know. That is interesting. I liked the little actress though. I thought she was,
she's a little scene stealer for sure.
I liked the kid. Obviously, he just has a really small part, but after Tom Cruise in the beginning, he goes into that diner in a little small town and he's like, where am I? And the kid's, eating his Fruit Loops or whatever. He's like, Earth.
Yeah. You know what that kid's name is?
No.
Yes.
As a character or as
No, it's like the actor.
Landon.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. I looked down
hilarious.
after like the 5th time or whatever. I was looking at the credits and I was like, "Oh, hey, Kid and Diner, Landon something."
Oh, that's hilarious.
Nice.
That is hilarious. You know, it's funny. In the list of questions that I had for you, I wrote down which movie is better and also which one is your favorite, because you do a really good job at separating. Even if you like a movie better, you can usually separate like which one is better. And so I was curious to see what you said, because
Yeah, you mean my favorite one?
for the Top Gun and the Maverick, because you separated them without me having to ask, which was
I
funny
think
to me.
I always felt like the first movie, even though I love it, I always felt like it's not my movie because I wasn't there when it came out or whatever. But I feel like with this one, I'm like, dude, I went to the premiere.
That
I
makes
saw it
sense.
8 times.
That makes sense.
I think I just have to go with this one.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It's like they just did a good job. I don't know.
They really did. And I think one of the reasons, I mean, there's so many reasons that I like this movie, but it's just, there's no BS. It's real. And,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about it plenty of times, but like the young actors are good. They're not soft. They're real military, just badasses. And we don't always have that, because there's been this, with Mr. Incredible, his saying about like, it's just another way to celebrate mediocrity.
Mhm.
And there's something, I don't care what anybody says, like there's something admirable about being the best of the best. And even like you even knew like Hangman was good, but there was a reason he didn't get to go on that mission. And
Yeah.
even Phoenix, Tom Cruise says something about like, oh, leaving your wingman, that's one I haven't seen in a while. And Hangman's like, oh, are you going to get offended that he called you a man? And she's like, as long as he doesn't call you a man. And I just love the
Yeah.
the badass camaraderie about
Yeah.
it.
And
It's just great.
I love when she's like, after the first training sequence when Rooster's on the ground and she's like, "What's up with you?" And then she's just like, "You got to get together or we're going to have to fly with Hangman." I just love that. It's like, like this guy's a pain in the ass.
I do too. And I liked Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked Bob too. Just this goofy,
Yeah.
guy.
His dad is a famous actor.
Is he?
So yeah, it's cool to see him. Before I saw Maverick, we watched the show he was in. So he's definitely had a good year this year.
Oh, really?
And he was playing a really different character. So it's interesting. Yeah. Actually, he was playing a rodeo guy. You might actually be interested in that.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
And like completely different characters. And I'm like, he's good,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing a bull rider guy. I think it was a bull. Yeah, bull riding.
Huh. That's interesting.
So, and he's like a tough guy with a beard, and it's funny seeing him because we saw that first, and then we saw Maverick. Yeah. And I'm like, oh wow, he's like.
He wasn't in the movie about Casey Field, was he? Do you remember?
No, this is a show on Amazon that it's kind of like a sci-fi. But it takes place on a ranch.
Never mind. Yeah, no, it's impressive because, like we talked about earlier, it could have been so easy, and Tom Cruise, I think, is but it could have been so easy to ruin this movie and have it be.
This could have been a phoned-in Hollywood cash grab, but it wasn't.
No.
And I think he was always apprehensive of that happening because everyone's always been asking, "What are the Top Gun?" And he's like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to just make a sequel that has no emotional weight or that sucks. And I think everything happened at the right time, which is interesting. I assume that Tom Cruise got Joseph Krasinski to direct this because they'd worked together on a movie called Oblivion, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like a sci-fi, and there's actually, I guess, like that features him flying around like a spaceship, a little spaceship. So it's kind of similar to Top Gun. And I guess Krasinski always had that in mind. So I assume that Tom Cruise went to him, but I guess Bruckheimer went to Kaczynski, and then Kaczynski came up with that whole third act thing. That was his pitch to Cruise.
Oh.
And then he was saying in that podcast that because he worked with Cruise previously, he knew how to pitch it to him. Like, because he knew like what, like I said, he knew what would get him excited. Like that whole, and that it was that sequence in the F-14 that he pitched him. And
that is crazy.
They built the movie around it.
Yeah.
And when I watched the movie, I'm like, hell yeah, dude. This is almost like if this was just the movie, they made a short film and it was just the scene, that would be enough for me. But they made a whole great movie around it. And it's just so cool.
Well, and I was excited Miles Teller was in it, but I didn't know how it was going to go because, when I was right before I would have came down to film school and met you, actually, I was on a Miles Teller kick, because I'd seen him in the remake of Footloose, and I loved his character as Willard. And then, so I went on kind of a Miles Teller binge and would watch, a lot of the movies he was in, The Spectacular Now, that he was, kind of the bad guy in Divergent. The 2-Night Stand movie. There was like some bro thing that he was in with Zac Efron, which I didn't like as much, but I liked him as an actor, and he had done Diverse, but I'm like, I don't know about him being a badass, because he's always been like, he's been kind of cocky, but he's never been like a ripped.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I'm like, well, Goose was kind of a character. So, and, Miles Teller's kind of a character. So I could see that working. And I just thought he impressed me the most, I think. Tom Cruise, definitely.
It was great casting because, like, he did get in good shape for the football scene.
Yes.
But it's almost like weird seeing him look like that because
I liked it.
No, yeah. But it's like, oh, wow. But
yeah.
He was cast as Rooster because, he's tall like his dad was. He's not really the badass of the movie. He has that Miles Teller like puppy dog, like you want to protect this guy, you want him to do well thing that he always has. And there's another film you should check out. It was Kaczynski's movie before this. It's called Only the Brave. And it's about a group of like hotshot firefighters in I think Arizona.
Yeah. And
it has the same kind of emotional, it has Jennifer Connelly as well, but it also has Miles Teller. And you should watch it. This movie, like, I'm not going to give anything away, but I'll just say that we were watching it, and then the internet was messed up, so we went downstairs to get some food, and then my mom was looking for something to watch, and I'm like, oh, we're watching this one, you should watch it, it's really good. And she put it on. So she was like 20 minutes behind us, so we finish it, we come down, and I'm like, my mom's crying downstairs.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Because we were like in bed, like, oh God.
Well, you didn't tell me Goose died, which obviously I'm glad you didn't.
No,
but
I can't tell it. Yeah, you have to experience that shit.
Thanks,
that
Val.
Shit's just like, yeah.
Well, something that when something tragic happens, there's one thing I feel like that sticks out in your brain for whatever reason. It's like your brain latches onto that one thing. And it was Maverick saying, it's like, he grabs Goose, and it was not the part where he grabbed Goose necessarily, but when he was like, oh no, like that sound that he makes, it's like, oh shit, this is, because it's like, it's not actually happening. And you can almost feel like Maverick's denial or something I don't know what it is about that specific line, but I'm just, No,
yeah, it's even the little flashback in the new movie. It's like,
I loved that. Okay. There's not much about Maverick, that Top Gun Maverick, that I don't like, but I loved that scene. I thought it was so powerful. And that's one of the reasons I think I like Jennifer Connelly's character, Penny, so well, is she, obviously she's just picked Maverick out the bar. She totally could have just been like, F you asshole. But then,
when
for the rest of
she just sees the look on his face, and she's like, she understands like what's going on. Yeah. There's so many moments in that movie that are like, this movie's got jets and all this crazy stuff, but like moments where it's just like Tom Cruise reacting, and you're like, damn, like,
yeah. Even, the part where, him and Miles Teller, Rooster are arguing, and he's like, don't think, just do. Or trust. Yeah. He says, trust me. And Rooster's like, my dad trusted you. I'm not going to make the same mistake.
I mean,
I'm like,
that killed me in the trailers.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see where this is going.
Yeah.
because it's not just like, I guess your first thought would be like, oh, Tom Cruise and Goose's son. You'd be like, oh, hell yeah, it's going to be just like Maverick and Goose again.
Yeah.
But saving that for the end,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, it's like free drama. You know,
It is.
like saying like, okay,
Yeah.
they can be best fucking friends, but it's also like, how would that work? Like 30 years apart in age. And they made it work, man. They crafted a nice little, piece of drama for those two characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I liked that he wasn't mad over him about the death necessarily. Yeah. Like that probably added fuel to his fire, but it was the papers thing.
Yeah. Because again, it's Maverick was a father figure to him his whole life. And then he, disrespected him or with that. But I also love the scene because he tells Jennifer Connelly, like, his mom made me promise him.
Right.
But it's almost like that's bullshit. Like when he gets confronted and he says, why did you stand in my way? He says, you weren't ready. And it's like, I feel like that. It's like, that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
You weren't
ready.
And
even him, I couldn't stand to lose Goose again,
Yeah. And there's a lot of weight. Like I'm sure if there was like a movie about Tom Cruise and young Rooster, the last thing he would want was him to join the Navy, but at the same time would want him to join the Navy. It's probably a conflicting thing for that character.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that would be it. Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, it's kind of crazy because I think for me too, I have not had a movie that I've went to theaters and enjoyed enough to go see again, let alone, 5 times. And I think like how you said, this is like your movie, you weren't out when the first or you weren't born when the first Top Gun came out. So you didn't have that experience. But in my lifetime, I feel like this is the first just freaking good movie to come out. Like this is a movie to me that we'll look back on in 30 years and it'll be an icon or a real staple moment in like cinematic history. And to be honest with you, since I've been born, I don't feel like there's been a movie. And, I wasn't really into the trend thing. I'm always like, there would be a big movie out and I'm like, I'll see it when it comes out. Definitely becoming friends with you has made me appreciate going to the movie theaters more. But and seeing Tom Cruise at, to be 50, 60 years old and just be a freaking badass like that is just, it's cool.
Yeah, he's done it better than anyone I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I took my mom to see this a couple times. She's always been a Cruise girl.
Yeah.
So I took her. I was like, Mom, we gotta go. And then I was like, you want to go again? She's like, yeah. So
did she?
I took her twice, and then she said the same thing. She's like, I can't believe, like, he looks so good. I'm like, I know. What the heck?
I know he does.
Whatever he's doing it right.
Yeah, he does, and it's not fake either. Like he just looks good. I'm
sure he gets fillers or whatever. I mean, you have to. He's almost 60, but he doesn't have that like scary like he does have wrinkle. He does have, there's lines on his face. It's just not like the typical 60-year-old that we all see. Because, again, he's a physical specimen. He's always has been. He's never been fat. He's never been a drunk. Right. He just doesn't. This is not his lifestyle. So pays off. But there's something else I was going to say. I don't remember now. Oh yeah, I was going to go back to. So I've been. From a young age, I loved the movie experience, like I was saying. And I think the reason I go so much, even if it's stuff, we just go to the movies a lot, but I'm always chasing that, like, that theatrical experience is that from when I was like a kid. I remember there was just movies like Lord of the Rings. Like I was like 11 when the first one came out. I had I remember I thought it looked cool, but I wasn't like a Lord of the Rings fan. I typically didn't like that kind of stuff, the fantasy stuff. But that movie did something to me. And like kind of similar with Star Wars, as I got older, I kind of felt like I just wasn't there when these were like, I was late to the scene. Like they were already around. But the fact that like Lord of the Rings, I was there and like I got upset. Like, yeah, I saw it. It was just, I'm always like chasing that.
Yeah.
And the Marvel movies have it. Like I've been seeing these Marvel movies since X-Men, since I was 9 years old. And it was just me and my brother and my dad would go see all the new Marvel stuff, DC stuff.
Yeah.
And and like, so there's a nostalgic thing for me. We always would talk about one of these characters met in a movie, like, and it just never happened. In the 2000s, they just got their own movie, and then it finally happened in, I was like 21.
Yeah.
But that child self came out in the Avengers movie, and I remember just being like, I've been waiting for this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, and I still like, the last two Avengers movies obviously were really good, but they had that years of like, it's almost like a TV show, years of developing these characters. And then, and then the Harry Potter movies, same thing, except I did lose interest in Harry Potter when I was in my teens, which I regret now, because I saw like the first two, and then the third one, I lost interest, and I didn't see another Harry Potter movie until like the seventh one in theaters. Or the sixth one.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got more into those as they completed. I mean, it was very emotional when it ended, because I was like, wow, like 10 years of this. Now it's like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I do regret not seeing like those middle movies. I was in like a pretentious movie part of my life where I was like, I don't see Harry Potter movies now.
Yeah, you're too cool. Yeah.
Like I was seeing like rated R movies and stuff. And I was really into Lord of the Rings. Like I said, Lord of the Rings came, and I was just like, nah, dude, Harry Potter ain't it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now I can appreciate just the fact that, I was around when those movies came out. Now that it's been 20 years, it's like, oh man, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, with Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Top Gun Maverick, like the similarity they have for me is they were intentional. So many times with these franchises or these multiple movie and book series or whatever, like they'll make a first movie, they'll write a first book, it does really well, and it's like, oh well, let's just throw in a sequel, and then by the time you get to the third one, it's clearly just for the money. And you can feel that through the art. And so with those movies, to have something so intentional, you don't get to see that in theaters all the time.
No, yeah. Even now, looking back, because like my like formative movie going years was in the 2000s. The 2000s was when like we were telling our dad what we wanted to see. It wasn't like in the 90s they would take us to see stuff or whatever.
Right.
And it was always like Rugrats or Disney, like, 90s stuff. But in 2000s, me and my brother were like, Dad, we got to go see, like, and it became like a thing. And then we got our own licenses, and we would go, I started seeing like, we got into like more like Scorsese, like probably when I was like 14, 15, like young. It's funny when I think about this stuff, like I felt like I was older back then. I was like, I'm like a 14-year-old kid, and I'm like excited about like this crazy movie that Spielberg did, which I have a poster behind me.
Yeah.
Hold on, see if I can get this. That movie there, Munich.
Yeah.
It came out in 2005. I was 15. Me and my brother, I snuck into that movie, and it's like this movie about it's like these Jewish not secret service, like special ops guys. And they're going and they're assassinating people who were behind the Munich Olympic massacre. I don't know if you know what that is, in the 70s. No. And that was at the time I was just like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. And I was like obsessed with it. And I look back now and I'm like, dude, you were 15. Like, what were you doing? But me and my brother, we elevated, especially from where we're from here. Like people are just, people were like getting into partying, and we were going to see stuff like that. Yeah. And it was like the day after Christmas. I think he had his license, so we like drove down. I had to sneak in. And it's just so funny thinking about that. I'm like, dude, I was 15 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was that long ago. I didn't feel like I was that young. But yeah, so that came out the same year as The Goblet of Fire. I did not care about The Goblet of Fire. I was like, dude, no, watching Munich.
That's so funny.
And like no one saw Munich, but it's a really good movie, but it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, because we had talked on the phone, and you had said, why you go to the movies. You had listed out a few reasons about how, you have no distractions. Like for 2 hours, you're like totally immersed in the movie. You know, you got done with that spiel. I'm like, okay, fine, Landon, I'm going to go to the movies. I get sold. I get it. And, you know, I got to thinking about it afterwards, but it's like this crumble of like the American family or like what we do as a family. And it's like, you know, first we quit eating dinner at the dinner table. Like even when I was a kid, you had those commercials about eat dinner at the dinner, like table, like that's where it happens. And then we quit going to the movies together. And I kind of wonder, like, what's the domino effect? Like, do we quit going to live concerts? And that sounds crazy, but you know, during COVID, we saw a lot of people doing live stream concerts, and it sounds crazy to think people would never go to live events anymore, just period. But I think it could be a slippery slope. And that's one of the reasons I think Top Gun Maverick has been so cool. I didn't think I would care about seeing it in a group of people in a theater, but being able to laugh with people and we'd laugh at the same time. And you could feel the theater like tense up in that third act when you're like, you think Maverick and Rooster have got away, but oh shit, here's something else comes. And it's like, okay, they're clear. And it's like, oh shit, here we go again. And then like you said, that guy being on their nose and Maverick missed it. It was like, oh shit, you know, and feeling that in a room with people with, you have better sound, you have a bigger screen. It's a really awesome experience that I think people should go experience, whether it's Top Gun Maverick or any other movie. There is a difference versus watching it at home on your screen.
Yeah, we just watched the Stranger Things show. It's kind of a show that we watched the first season when it came out, but we kind of fell away from it.
Yeah.
But we decided to, you know, give it a go. And like, you know, it's a good show and it looks good and all this stuff. But I feel like there's almost a disconnect now with a TV show and movies. Like, I don't know, TV is for the small screen.
Yeah.
And a film or, you know, it should be like a more cinematic. I mean, they have more of a budget into this 2 hours than you do in this 10-hour series. And I just feel like the art of like going to the cinema and just like, you know, it's filmmakers understand, like when I hear filmmakers talk about the importance of theaters, like I truly understand what they mean. And I think that's what sets like us apart from just a person that's like, oh yeah, no, I saw that movie, it was all right.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like, it's like a personality thing.
Well, I was talking to someone that, you know, asked me like, I don't understand how you've seen it 5 times. And I said, you know, the first time it's kind of like you're just watching it, you're trying to comprehend it. The second time, you know, and I had talked to you and you had pointed out the significance of the F-14 and then Penny Benjamin. And so then I'm trying to pick up on all these little details that I missed between the first and the second one. And I mean, one, it doesn't feel like I've seen it 5 times. And like I said, I'm probably going to go see it a 6th time tomorrow because it's Tom Cruise's birthday. So why not?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to edit this tonight and this episode's going up on Tom Cruise's birthday
too.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, for me, it's just, it makes me feel good. It relaxes me. So, and I don't feel like I've seen it, but then the person I was talking to asked like, well, do you think you just pick up on stuff from being in film school? I'm like, there's definitely things I think about of like, you know, for me, it's always the writing decisions, you know, because at the end of, you and I talked about it, like at the end of the day, writing out of the whole movie production experience, like writing and then seeing the writing go onto screen. That's my favorite part of it. So I'm trying to figure out what were the writers thinking? Why would they have wrote something this way? How did they foreshadow? So I'm definitely picking up on that. Then after I think about that, I definitely start looking at shots and I take photos and do photography and I have mad respect for good natural lighting. Like I just love it. And so I definitely watch that. You're really
good at using natural light as well.
Sometimes. Sometimes people tell me things don't look good though.
Whatever. What do they know?
They don't know. No, I'm
talking about me.
Yes. This can't look good. Want to bet.
Yeah, I was wrong. I admit it.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just never going to let you live that down. Like, I think there's something you're not going to, my lack of movie watching, like you're never going to let me live that down. And that's just fine. But I'm getting there. I've seen Jaws now. I've seen Top Gun now. I started Lord of the Rings. I've seen Jack Reacher. Like we're getting places. Star Wars. You had me watch Star Wars, so we're getting places. But it's just like when when someone's asked that question, I'm like, it's just a good movie. Like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It just reminds me of like when I was a kid and my family had like a certain amount of movies that we'd always watch.
Yeah.
And this movie fits into those movies, like just that 90s. They were typically 90s movies because, it was the 90s and into the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But as a family, we'd always agree on like 5 movies, right?
Okay.
That we can all, and this movie just feels like one of those movies that like, and it just makes it like happy endings, real drama, real tension. Like it works on all your emotions, and that's what like perfect films are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
How can I scare you, make you laugh, make you cry? I mean, that's what the whole thing is.
Yeah.
And it's funny, after over 100 years of this, there's still movies that just don't know what they're doing. And even this movie, hearing the director say like every day, like you have no idea if this is going to work. Mm-hmm. And like me being a film student and making some crappy little 15-minute film and being like, I have no idea what, and to hear these guys that have these multi-million, $200 million movies say the same thing. It's like, okay, so that's just part of the job. I mean, you're never going to feel like, and there's some movies that just don't. Imagine working 2 years on something and being like, we failed on that one. That was a fucking fail. And his movies, I mean, he's a good director. His first movie was Tron Legacy, which, funny enough, was another Legacy sequel for the first Tron movie that came out in the 80s, and it's pretty good. Like it doesn't completely work, and but it's pretty good, and it has an epic scope. I remember seeing it in the theater and just being like, I like this tone. I like. And then, so he did the second movie with Cruise, which is Oblivion. And it was the same kind of a vibe. It was like very scientific, sci-fi vibe, really good music, super cool, like atmosphere. Like he really knows how to like make a mood. But it kind of didn't connect with audiences too much, but I like it. And they also didn't make much money. And then he did that movie with Teller, the firefighter one, which I regret not seeing in the theater because that movie's like emotional, man.
Yeah. I think I made a point not to see that movie. Now that I'm thinking about it, my friend is a firefighter hotshot, and they went to go see it because of that. And they told me, they're like, it'll mess you up. So they're like, I don't know if I know.
It caught me by surprise. And I remember it coming out and we just didn't see it. I don't know why, but I wish I would have seen it like in IMAX and shit. But this movie's his first hit, and like it's funny. I shook the guy's hand. I talked to him at the premiere, but I hadn't seen this movie yet, and I hadn't seen Only the Brave. I wish I could have just been like, man, like, But he's a nice guy, He was. I felt bad because like this stupid couple next to us. The director walks away, and the guy goes, "Who was that?" Like,
was this at the premiere?
Director. Yeah, because everyone was just there to see like the movie stars. I'm like, dude, it's the director. Like, do some research before you come to this movie, baby. Yeah. I recognized him from like across the thing. I was like, oh, that tall guy over there, that's the director. I've seen him on,
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
But yeah, this is his first like hit, and I'm just like proud of him. I'm like, you're not gonna always get a hit the first time, or even the second time or third time. But yeah, it's like a much deserved hit, and I think he's obviously gonna have a dope career now.
Yeah.
And especially if he continues. I guess his next movie is gonna be F1, like the car racing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, my cousin that I took to go see Top Gun with me is huge into F1.
Oh yeah. Then I guess it's gonna have the same similar shooting techniques. Like it's gonna be pretty like intense, I guess. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
And I'm it's making $1 billion. I'm sure there's gonna be a Top Gun 3. I just really hope. I don't know. If they do a Top Gun 3, it needs to like. I don't know what it's gonna be, but like.
Honestly, I hope Cruise still has control over it because he'll wait. I don't think he'll chase the money and do his
Well,
third.
I don't know
Just do
how
a
I don't
third.
know how long he can wait. He's gonna be 70 years old.
No, I know, but I feel like I don't know, if he still has kind of the yay or nay on it, I feel like he'll at least, even if it's only a few years
If
or,
they do a Top Gun 3, it
oh,
would bring back all these guys, the young guys,
yeah, yeah,
and Tom Cruise Maverick would have to have like probably a smaller role,
I think so too.
and this could be like the middle one could be like the Maverick movie, and then he could be, maybe he's an admiral now, if it could work, but it's not gonna top this
No.
third act in this one. So who knows?
I don't like to think about it. I mean, one, because I'm still like basking in the awe of this movie, but it's such a gamble. And partially, I would like to see a third one, like with Miles Teller being more of the role. And I actually
Mhm.
did kind of like the dynamic between him and Phoenix. I think it could be fun to flush that out a little bit more. And
Yeah, I mean, you could do it, but it would have to be truly its own thing, and
yes,
it wouldn't. I don't think it could be Maverick's movie. Like, he definitely has to be involved in some capacity,
right.
but
It'd
I
be
don't
him
think it could.
passing the
Yeah,
baton to Rooster, I
yeah,
think. Yeah,
it would have to be something like that.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Is there any final thoughts you have on Top Gun? Either one.
Final thoughts is just, yeah, if you haven't seen it, I don't know why you listen to this, but go see it on the big screen,
Yeah.
or go see it again if you've seen it already. And yeah, I'm just, after all we've been through in the last couple years, like,
Yeah.
whew, I needed this movie so like bad just for my soul, especially my like
Yeah.
movie goer soul. And I just feel like like, this sounds pretentious, but like, it healed a lot of those, like a lot of that COVID stuff
I feel
for
the same
sure.
way. It may feel weird. It feels like it put a like wound dressing or
Yeah.
something, or I don't know. I can't explain. I'm glad you said that because
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it
like,
feels like it
I know
healed.
I definitely have friends that scoff that I've seen it so many times. I'm like, I don't care. First of all, I've always seen, like I said, I saw Revenge of the Sith 5 times when I was 14. Like,
Yeah.
I saw War of the Worlds 3 times.
Yeah.
I typically see Cruise movies multiple times, but yeah, 8 times, dude, I don't care. I'll go see it 9 times. I'm lucky enough to, like, well, I prioritize my life around movies. I've always done that. Like, people are kind of like, oh yeah, I might go this weekend. And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always prioritized like my life around movies releasing.
Hmm.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Hey, we all have our thing, and
Yeah, you all exactly.
yeah.
Like, people go fishing. Go fishing. I don't give a shit. I'm not going 3:00 in the morning. I don't think so. But have fun. I don't care. I'm gonna go watch Top Gun again, probably.
Oh yeah, when people roll their eyes that I've seen it that many times, I'm like, I'm still behind Landon. So
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. And, for me, it lets me shut my mind off, just be focused and immersed in the movie. And it makes you think about life. Like when you brought that up, that's one of my favorite scenes when Maverick says, I've said everyone's my favorite now, but when Maverick's like, it's not what I do, it's who I am. It just, for me, it's like you see someone where they belong, and for me anyway, it starts making me ask, like, okay, where do I actually belong? Like,
Yeah.
what is my thing in life that is like Maverick to flying? Like, what is my thing of that? And I think that's what makes it so powerful is Tom Cruise is where he belongs. And, it's like this whole full circle thing of like makes you ask the deeper questions in life and see how well, when people are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, seeing how well all that comes together and makes you, I think, just appreciate life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. And I think, yeah, you're right. You're really right about that. Yeah, it's not a lot of people. And it's just like, the beginning when he does the test flight and he's just like so excited to do it. And they're canceling it. And he's just like, no, we're going Mach 10. Like, I'm not like, this is how I go down. This is how I go down. And it just, yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
I love that reoccurring line. This is where you belong. It's just not where I belong. And then at the end, Warlock says it to him. It's where you belong.
Yeah.
And it's just like too. 3 times. It's full circle. It's on like the carrier again. He's about to do it. It's just like so cool.
It is. It really is. Yeah. Well, we'll be back for more movie talk for sure. This was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what new movie. I mean, we could talk a lot about old movies, but what new movie will have me this excited? I don't know what the next one will be.
I know.
I
I
really
was gonna
don't.
ask you how you feel about Avatar because I don't know.
I don't know. Avatar was one of those movies. Like I always liked James Cameron. I like
Yeah.
Terminator, and
Hmm.
I grew up on like True Lies, and
Yeah.
Titanic. I'm not the biggest Titanic. I think Titanic's like pretty over. Like it's not like I hate the movie. I just feel like it's like every girl you meet loves Titanic. I'm like,
Yes.
pick a new movie. Come on, like
Yeah.
like you're proving that all girls like the same thing. Like
Yes,
pick
I know.
another movie, please.
Yeah.
But I respect what it is. When it came out, though, I just remember I was 6 or 7, and people would not shut up about this movie. And I remember
Yeah.
to this day, I'm like, shut up about Titanic. Jeez, but I appreciate it, but there's still stuff that I just do not like about that movie, and it's so annoying. You can't. I've gotten in fights with people about it. I'm like, relax,
Yeah.
jeez.
Yeah.
But so with Avatar, I was excited that Cameron was making another movie. I remember it was '07,
Mm,
and they released a picture of them on the set, and I remember being like, that'll be cool. And it was literally like it took 2 years to finish,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then we were in Universal Studios and we saw it at that IMAX, and I remember being like, okay, that was it. Like that was just Dances with Wolves. Like, and then people just wouldn't shut up about it. And I'm just like, what is it about James Cameron that makes the most overrated, overhyped cinema? And I'm just
Hmm.
like, he recycled scripts and like, yeah, he advances technical stuff,
Hmm.
but I'm just like, again, I liked it. I give it like a 7 out of 10.
Hmm.
But people are just like, anyway, so I'm in the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I want to see it. It shouldn't have took this long to come out. It's like what, 15
Yeah.
years?
A long time. A long time.
No, if it 13 years. It's way too long. This should have been 5 years tops.
2007 or 8, I feel like.
It was
Right?
'09 and it came out.
Oh, '09. Okay.
Yeah, and I know there was like COVID delays and shit, but dude, it's not just this one.
Mm,
There's gonna be like one every other year for like 5. I'm just like, I don't know. Do people still care about this? I don't really
yeah.
care. I'm gonna see it because I see movies,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm not like, oh my god, I've been waiting. I really could care less if there was another Avatar, and it's just
Mhm.
like 13 years. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I hope it's good. I want it to be good. I hope it's better than the first one. It
Hmm.
looks good. I mean, the trailer looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, looks. I don't know what the story is or anything, but I'm sure it's gonna be
Right.
James Cameron esque. Like, he's
Yeah.
pretty. Like, he got. I think he just got so into the technical aspects. His
Hmm.
scripts and his stories are pretty. Just like, you know,
Meh.
yeah. Like we've seen
Yeah.
Avatar a million times. It's the whole. I'm part of this tribe. I fell in love with someone in this tribe, and now I'm against my tribe. It's like we've seen it a billion times.
Yeah.
And then this one has CGI and
You just ruined Avatar for half the planet.
no, I don't think I did. There's people who agree with me,
No.
and there's
No.
people
I
that.
know. Yeah.
But I just remember I remember thinking like it was good, it was okay, but then the weeks and it kept making more money, and I felt like the average like audience was just like the spectacle of it. But I remember
Hmm.
just being like, and it was the same thing with Titanic. I'm like, you're not talking about the silliness. You're just talking about, yeah, it was cool when the boat went down, but like, and like, I don't know, I'm a guy, so I don't care about Leo. And maybe that's what it was. All the girls were gaga over Leo. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, those two movies, man. And they're like the biggest movies ever. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. You and I don't do well with trendy stuff though either. So
Well, I don't know. I mean, because Top Gun Maverick's trendy right now, but
y-
I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know. It depends on what it is, I think. And when something's pretty mediocre and people just don't
Mm.
shut up about it, and there's people that can probably argue that this movie's mediocre, but they're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've heard some people are like, it was super predictable. And I'm like, I didn't really think so, but I guess I didn't.
But I think where this movie stands out, and you kind of cracked it there, the parallels between not only Maverick and Top Gun, but with Cruise himself. And yeah, that like movies that can extend through the screen, and you, like you said, you were thinking about where you belong.
Yeah.
That's like so cool that a movie can do that. And that's what movies used to do. And I just feel like that's kind of what's lost. Anyway, this movie was made with passion, you can tell, and a lot of movies just aren't. They're just, oh, we're doing Star Wars. Okay, well, we need to have this, that, the Millennium Falcon. We need to have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. We need to have Han Solo wearing a leather jacket and Chewbacca and blah 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 blah. And it's just like, now go buy toys.
No, you're right. It's like,
and I was a sucker. I was like crying when those trailers were released because they showed you what you've already seen before. But the thing was, when you saw the movie, you were like, what? Where the Top Gun trailers, they did the same thing. They had that music stinger where you're like, oh, that's the theme, oh, goosebumps. And then they'll have like, Maverick saying, like, the trailers were good, but the movie was its own thing.
Yeah.
And it transcended those trailers, where The Force Awakens, you were just like lied to. Like, you were just like completely lied to.
Dude, and I don't know why this makes me the maddest about the sequels. I don't like Snoke. Like, what the hell? I don't know. Like, Vader was such a badass. And then...
Well, that's the thing. You're not going to... I mean, I'm surprised. I'm sure they were talking for months about how they can bring back Vader. And now you look at every Disney Plus show has Vader in it because they know that Vader's a sure thing. And that Obi-Wan show was... I mean, that can be a whole nother episode, but that shit was terrible.
I think that should be our next episode, actually, because I was just sitting here thinking, like, what should we do next? But I think we should just shit on Star Wars.
Yeah, maybe we should. I mean, we've kind of done it enough. But okay, going back to connecting Star Wars with Top Gun.
Yeah.
That movie Oblivion I told you about. When I saw that, it was 2013.
Yeah.
It was right after, it's after Disney purchased Star Wars. It was like right a few months later. I remember thinking, this director understands Star Wars. The movie has nothing to do with Star Wars, but you can tell he's a fan, and you can tell he took a lot of inspiration from Star Wars. And I remember thinking, like, his tone felt like the old Star Wars. And I remember thinking, like, this is the guy that needs to do Star Wars. And I think I was the only one thinking that. Instead,
right, because the mission in Top Gun is essentially the Death Star.
Right. Exactly. No, there's parallels in this movie as well.
Yeah.
And Tron as well. And I just think, like, this guy should have been the guy to do it, but he didn't have that box office sure thing that Abrams had. So obviously, and it's just like, that's what they do. That's where their mind is. They want to make Star Wars exclusive, or not exclusive, inclusive. Sorry. They want to do all these things. And what happens is that stuff is not bad. But when all that stuff is there, and then they say the story is over here, and then the story gets lost in translation, then you just have a mess. And that's, I think, what happened. We can get more into that. But if someone like this that took Top Gun, which is a 30-plus-year-old thing, and made it this good of a sequel, I mean, I think he could have really done something. But who knows if they would have let him do his thing, Like, Abrams is the guy that they're going to say, we're going to pay you this much, do what you did with Star Trek, just make it Star Wars, but also do all this stuff, and don't ask any questions, and you'll make a lot of money. And that's what we got. So if I had a time machine, I would do a lot of things, but I would definitely be like, George, do not sell this to Disney. Don't do it, please. And I'll take a lot of stuff with me and show him and be like, this is what's, like, don't do it.
This is what's going to happen. This is what the future looks like.
Just keep Star Wars as 3 classic films, 3 like shitty ones, but whatever, at least you did them, and just leave it at that. Don't do this.
The thing with the prequels that I like actually is there's still a lot of philosophy and like underlying political stuff that I actually think could be used really well for history teachings.
Yeah,
And
the problem,
so
I
at
mean,
least those,
should we just save all this for the Star Wars episode?
yeah, we should, yeah. We'll
Anyway,
just do,
I was just saying
anyway,
that
the next episode
Joseph
we'll do a
Kosinski,
Star Wars deep dive.
in an alternate universe, Joseph Kosinski was hired to do the Star Wars sequels, and they ruled.
And they
But we don't live in that universe, so
we'll keep that. We'll pretend. So okay, so yes, next time that's what we'll do. We'll do a Star Wars deep dive, and we'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of Star Wars. How's that?
cool. We should also talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly because I love that movie.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, you know what I think would be fun, because I had said this before, but that was why I really wanted to do this podcast, was like, I get to call you every time, but not everyone has a Landon. They get a call with movies. And this is something I
True.
really enjoyed. So I think it would be fun. I still have a copy of your movie list. I'll put like a copy of your movie list on my website for like people to go access. And then we can just start. And then that'll give me an excuse to watch more movies when I quit watching Top Gun every day.
I know. Oh, you can do one more thing.
Yeah.
This weekend, assuming you have some time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Tom Cruise's birthday. So Tom Cruise is born July 3rd, 1962. Right. He was in a movie called Born on the 4th of July, which was an Oliver Stone movie about, I'm not going to remember his name. He was a Vietnam vet that turned into like an activist about the war, but such a good performance by Cruise.
Okay.
If you have some time this weekend, I suggest checking it out. It's kind of a tough watch, but not too bad.
Boy.
But I mean, if you're getting into Cruise movies, it's a must watch because it's arguably his best performance. I mean, it's came out in 91, I think. So he was pretty young, but yeah. I'm probably going to watch it this weekend.
Okay.
Sounds good right now.
All right. Okay. So next episode, that's what you can expect. We'll do the good, the bad, and the ugly of Star Wars.
Yeah. And I can't wait to eventually do a whole Lord of the Rings thing.
I know. I
can't wait and we should do it like, because I know me and you talk about stuff, but we should try to make it fresh and not talk about it until we do the episode.
Until this. Yeah. Like I watch.
Yeah. So that way it's like.
Oh, yes. No, we should. So yes, I will make sure that I watch them. We'll have a podcast planned and we'll do it fresh, because we have our best conversations when I'm like, I can't believe that just happened.
Well, yeah, then we won't be repeating ourselves because yeah, you know what I mean. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, my friend. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. It means so much to me, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And it's just, I don't know, I just really wanted to bring this more like lighthearted and fun conversations to the podcast. And it truly was a joy. And I just, like I said, I love listening to Landon talk about movies. So I hope you loved it as much as I did. And if you did, it would mean the world to me if you took a screenshot of this episode and shared it to your Instagram story and tag Landon and I in it and tell us what you loved and what you want to see next. And we would love feedback, because at the end of the day, this episode is for you. So Landon and I are at Sommese L and at Michaela Pollock on Instagram. And we would love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, which is all things Star Wars. So thank you so much, my friend. And until next time, be a rebel, live aligned, and go make a ruckus.